Chapter 507. Then Su Li saw the handsome young man, who exuded the characteristics of Ling Qinglan, open his hands, and the spiritual fire behind him suddenly rose higher. Although there was no wind, the fire was twisting wildly, as if a huge and ferocious monster was roaring wantonly. At the same time, the cold woman beside the handsome young man, who had been exuding the pneuma of Yin Shui, took a step forward and murmured. The mysterious pneuma around her kept flying and gradually turned into a black and purple odd-shaped portal. There was a trace of blood in the portal, as if it was a bloody mouth that had not yet opened. The cold woman's eyes were ruthless. She glanced at the last 3 rows of disciples in the field and stretched out her slender fingertips. Countless spiritual lights scattered. The next moment, swish, swish, swish. In the square, beams of spiritual lights rose from the futons into the sky, illuminating the faces full of fear. A strange smile appeared on the cold woman's face, and her voice was soft with a strong, bewitching power. Come on, throw yourself into the flame of the Mirage Immortal. You will live forever and become a part of the Mirage Immortal. This is the supreme glory. Boom. Su Li suddenly felt a burst of heat around her, and then she saw another pillar of spiritual light rising into the sky. The pale young man looked even paler. His cheeks tightened, and he stood up from the futons like the others. I was chosen? Why? I don't want to be integrated with the old ancestor of the Mirage Immortal. Disgusting. A strong sense of unwillingness burned his internal organs, but his body uncontrollably walked towards the flames. The cold woman's voice was still echoing in his ears, like the voice of a devil. Finally, the first batch of tribal disciples in front of him stepped into the flame. The hot temperature instantly evaporated the tears in his eyes, leaving only the extremely repressed screams and the burning sound in his bones like firewood. The spiritual fire was so powerful, and these disciples' cultivation was not high. Only one of them entered it. He was almost annihilated. Su Li stared at the giant door behind the cold woman. In her eyes, she clearly saw that the disciples of the Tiani tribe were burned to death and turned into a trace of special energy and poured into the door. The purple-black color around the door became thicker and thicker, and a bigger gap appeared in the door. The blood-red liquid seemed to flow out in the next moment, which was extremely evil. Su Li subconsciously touched her ring finger, but she didn't touch the black lotus ring. She curled her lips. Killing your own kind. Such a cold-blooded race should not exist in this world. Today, I will enforce justice on behalf of the heavens and set you free. The cold voice swept across the square like a light breeze, instantly releasing all the control over the offerings. At this moment, the entire square fell into silence. Even the sacrifices had their eyes wide open, and they'd forgotten to flee. Someone actually dared to make trouble at the sacrificial ceremony. The handsome young man and the cold-looking woman were both shocked and furious. They had not expected such a turn of events, and their expressions instantly darkened. The cold woman waved her hand, and the purple-black door instantly spread, covering the entire square to prevent anyone from escaping. She glanced at the square with her cold and beautiful eyes and said in a gloomy tone, "Who are you? Come out and die." In many astonished faces, Su Li stood up with a smile and patted the ordinary disciple clothes on her. Her lips didn't move, but her voice was clearly heard by everyone. Only 80% of the young disciples came. Well, it's better than nothing. Before she finished her words, Su Li's figure suddenly disappeared. The cold woman and the handsome young man's pupils shrank suddenly, and a huge crisis of life and death enveloped them. They took out a token and crushed it without saying a word. The altar shone with cyan light, and countless cyan blades darted around. In the blink of an eye, more than half of the disciples in the square were accidentally injured. In the cyan light, the handsome young man looked slightly relaxed, and his face was cold. Father and the elders must have found it. I just need to hold on for a moment, and then I can escape. Puff. Without warning, a pitch-black claw came out from his back. The handsome young man felt a sharp pain in his chest, and then he blacked out. He didn't know anything. Su Li's eyes were indifferent. Countless cyan wind blades hit through her pitch-black body and couldn't hurt her at all. She held the young man's head in one hand, and a circle of blackness spread rapidly on the edge of the bloody hole in his chest. In the blink of an eye, the handsome young man's body turned black, and then turned into black powder, drifting away. Only a group of unconscious soul light was flickering in the air. 80% of Ling Qinglan's soul is concentrated on this person. Good luck. Su Li smiled slightly and threw the soul light into the nightmare's mouth unhurriedly. Then she killed the cold woman and got 60% of Yin Shui's soul. After that, Su Li waved her hand to disperse the flying cyan blades. The purple-black door in the square was still running, and it was not affected by the cold woman at all. Sure enough, this door is a treasure of the evil circle. Su Li didn't look at the geniuses of the Tiani tribe in the square and stepped towards the purple-black door. Every step she took, black water gushed out under her feet, and the whole square was submerged in the blink of an eye. No matter what methods the disciples and geniuses of the Tiani tribe used, they couldn't resist the invasion of the black water, and it finally touched their skin. The seemingly cold black water instantly turned into hot fire poison, and the square was turned into a sea of fire, like a hell on earth. What is this? Help me, help me. I am the future of the lineage. I can't die. Why, the pale young man trembled violently and stared at the scene in front of him blankly. The black water around him seemed to have a spirit and automatically bypassed him without hurting him. But he was not happy at all. Even if he survived from the demon woman because of what he said, as the only survivor of this disaster, would the clan let him go? Impossible. Su Li leaned against the purple-black door, which was getting brighter and brighter, and looked at the cruel scene in the square calmly. Since some of you, who are not qualified, are destined to be sacrifices, you might as well help me. As for you geniuses who stole Ling Qinglan and Yin Shui, you deserve to die. As soon as she finished speaking, her ink-black hair fluttered without wind. The temperature of the black water flame rose again, and the void was faintly distorted. Thousands of disciples were burned to ashes, and bits of soul and spiritual light gathered and were swallowed by the nightmare. It's almost time. I didn't expect that there would be an unexpected harvest. Su Li saw that the purple-black door had opened a big gap, and a mass of wriggling flesh was trying to squeeze out. Her eyes were bright, and she licked her lips with a strange smile. Are you the Mirage Immortal? You look delicious. The wriggling flesh suddenly stagnated, and then squeezed into the door more crazily. Unfortunately, the purple-black door opened slowly, and it also closed slowly. The black curtain that covered the sky gradually faded. Su Li stopped smiling and threw the nightmare into the body of the pale young man. The pale young man was stunned for a moment, and then immediately opened a gap in the void to escape. Crash! The thinning black curtain finally turned into fragments in the almost crazy attacks of the patriarch of the Tianyin tribe and the elders. The scene in the square came into view, but it made all of them feel cold. Everyone was dead. 80% of the talented disciples of our Tianyin tribe were all dead in this short time. For a moment, all the elders were dizzy, and the emotions of despair and rage kept surging. It's you, my son. The patriarch of the Tianyin tribe, who was calm in front of the collapsing mountain, was gasping violently when he said a word at the moment. His eyes were bloodshot, and he almost wanted to devour people. Go to hell. Boom! With a shocking explosion, the black air surged behind the patriarch of the Tianyin tribe, and the shadow of a giant scorpion appeared. The giant scorpion roared, and its two pincers, which were bigger than the top of the mountain, slapped at Su Li. Su Li grabbed the exposed flesh of the giant door with one hand, and the black color had contaminated a small area. You come at the right time. She turned her head with a smile, and saw that the slender and white right hand suddenly turned into a pitch-black sharp claw, facing the poisonous scorpion's pincers. Although the patriarch of the Tianyin tribe was extremely hateful, He immediately calmed down after entering the fighting state. His face was hideous and distorted. At the moment when the two sides were about to touch, his hands turned into afterimages, and he made a series of dazzling restrictive spells. The poisonous scorpion's two pincers waved, and they instantly turned into hundreds of pairs of giant pincers. From top to bottom, they pressed down like a huge awl. Boom! A bright cold light flashed over the top of the mountain, and the whole mountain immediately shook violently. No, the patriarch is angry, and the whole mountain will collapse. Seeing this, the elders immediately flew to 4 directions to consolidate the big tactical matrix of the mountain. If this mountain collapsed into the area where the disciples live below, there would be countless deaths and injuries. Their Tianyin tribe couldn't afford any more deaths. What about the demon girl? She must be dead. What is the cultivation of the patriarch? The demon girl just took advantage of the loophole of the sacrifice. I hate it. Why does the gate of the Mirage Immortal stop us from going in? If it weren't for the Black Barrier, our tribe wouldn't be so miserable. Many elders spoke one after another. They all looked sad and indignant, with tears in their eyes. The foundation of their Tianyin tribe for thousands of years was almost destroyed by a young, evil demon girl. It's a great shame. It's a great shame. The patriarch of the Tianyin tribe stood quietly in the nothingness, listening to the voices coming from around. There was no joy or sadness on his face, but his body became much hunched. The voice and smile of his son in the past kept flashing in his mind. Dad, I want to become stronger, no matter what price I have to pay. Dad, I'm not talented enough, and I don't want to lose your face. No matter what side effects of the soul fusion method, I'm willing to accept it. Dad, I have accepted the soul of EMO perfectly. As long as I digest it, your son will not let you down. I have grown up. Let me preside over the sacrifice this time. With Sister Ning Shui's help, there will be no mistakes. He closed his eyes in pain and regretted very much in his heart. Why did he promise his son to take this path? Retribution is coming. There was a laugh in his ear. Chapter 508. The patriarch of the Tianyin tribe was stiff all over. Before he had time to dodge, the dart palm had been quietly printed on his back. Boom! The patriarch of the Tianyin tribe shot into the mountain like a cannonball. The mountain that had barely been maintained collapsed in an instant. The elders who maintained the tactical matrix all spat out blood, and their pneuma instantly weakened. Gravel and boulders fell into the residence of the disciples of the Tianyin tribe below like rain, and countless people were killed and injured in an instant. Giggle! Su Li's chuckle echoed in the mountain, and her figure turned into a black electric arc and shot into the mountain. After a while, she flashed back to the original place, with the dying patriarch of the Tianyin tribe in her hand. Is this all the patriarch of the Tianyin tribe can do? It's really disappointing. As Su Li said, she looked calmly at the depths of the mountain range, where 2 pneumas were waking up and coming here. The face of the patriarch of the Tianyin tribe was covered with blood. He opened his eyes with difficulty and saw Su Li's hands with sharp nails. He coughed up blood and laughed. Demon, you killed the talent of my tribe. Even if you catch me, you can't leave here alive today. You seem to have misunderstood something. Su Li smiled with her beautiful eyes. The pneuma belonging to the purple-black giant door in her body was like a high explosive, tumbling violently. If it weren't for the suppression of the ghost energy, it would have poured out long ago. The pneuma of the Mirage Immortal. Although the patriarch of the Tianyin tribe was seriously injured and dying, he still sensed the pneuma in Su Li's body. His eyes suddenly widened, and his bloody eyeballs almost broke out of his eye sockets. Madman, do you want to? Su Li grinned, revealing 3 rows of sharp fangs in her mouth. At this moment, 2 shocking roars came from the depths of the Tianyin tribe. That demon destroyed the future of my tribe. Go to hell. Go to hell. 2 shadows, one gray and one white, rushed to the collapsed mountain in an instant, and Su Li smiled even more. No. The patriarch of the Tianyin tribe shouted with all his strength. The two shadows finally realized that something was wrong, but it was too late. Su Li's smile was full of madness. The purple-black light flashed through her body, and her body expanded 100 times in the blink of an eye. Then, rumble, a huge mushroom cloud rose from the sky of the Tianyin tribe, and the violent vibration spread to the foot of the mountain. The practitioners in Tianyi City looked up at the huge explosion at the same time and were stunned. The Tianyin tribe exploded. In the Jiguang sect, an elder in black clothes rushed into the room with sweat all over his head. He said in horror, "Lord, something big happened in the Tianyin tribe." Xian Jingzhou, who had been paying attention to the movement, immediately took the note. When he saw the news from the spy in Tianyi City, he was also stunned. What did Su Juzhou do? The next day, a piece of shocking news flew to all parts of Qingshui, circle through Tianyik Attic, and immediately caused a storm in the cultivation circle. The Tianyin tribe was destroyed. I don't know who did this, but all the elders, sect master, and 2 quasi-emperors are dead. 90% of the disciples are dead, and only a senior quasi-emperor who's about to reach the end of his lifespan is left to take charge of the situation. The veteran junior emperor won't live for hundreds of years. The entire Tianyin tribe is destroyed like this. It is equivalent to the extinction of the tribe. According to the last surviving disciple, a quasi-emperor female cultivator came to seek revenge, and she perished together with the entire clan. Lili, something big happened in Qingshui Circle again. Jili region. Hua Yin hurriedly ran to the back mountain. When she saw the door of the addendum was half open, she knew that her old friend had returned. She quickly pushed the stone door open. The light shone into the addendum and shone on Su Li's slightly pale face. Hua Yin was shocked. "Are you hurt? Who hurt you?" Su Li glanced at Gue Baiyin, who was hiding in the dark, shook her head, and said, "I didn't pay attention to it. It's just a minor injury. I will recover soon." She didn't lie. The explosion of the evil ghost was indeed a minor injury. It was her unique talent of evil ghost. It wouldn't take long for the evil ghost to be resurrected. At the moment when the evil ghost exploded, her consciousness had returned to her body. Although she lost a little of her divine soul because of her improper operation for the first time, it only took her a few breaths to make up for it. "That's good." Hua Yin breathed a sigh of relief and put the latest intelligence of Tianyik Attic on the table. "I have been arranging the intelligence network of Jili region, but the time is too short to penetrate into other big regions. These intelligence still have to rely on Tianyik Attic." Su Li nodded with a smile. "It's already very good. It's not urgent. After I solve Yushu's sect, there will be plenty of time to develop." Hua Yin nodded slightly. A trace of worry flashed in her eyes, but it was soon hidden. She stood up. "Then you take care of yourself. I will let Zai and others come see you in 2 days." Su Li nodded and watched Hua Yin take a few steps. Then she hesitated and turned her head, sighing, "Don't put too much pressure on yourself. At worst." Sensing the concern of her friend, Su Li's heart was slightly warmed. It seemed that the monstrous killing she had done in the past 2 days was washed away a little. "I know what I'm doing. Don't worry." Hearing that Su Li's tone was gentle and not impatient, Hua Yin smiled and left the addendum. Not long after, she came to the main hall of the sect. Yin Zai and others had been waiting here. Seeing Hua Yin's arrival, everyone immediately greeted her. "How is it, Master? Is she back?" Yin Zai said. He was shrouded in a strong, murderous spirit. In the past 2 months, he had secretly subdued the 25 sects and killed a lot of people. So far, he hadn't completely washed away the bloody smell. His cultivation also made rapid progress in the killing and reached the middle stage of Huashan realm. Dongfang Wuxue also came over. He was in cyan clothes. His cultivation had been restored to Yuanying realm with the help of spiritual power. Under the guidance of Yin Zai, he was about to break through Huashan realm. LVU rolled up his sleeves and stood aside calmly, but his ears were raised high. His aptitude was the lowest, so his cultivation speed was not as fast as others. However, as the first casual practitioner to turn to Su Li, he would naturally not be excluded from Su Li's side. Hua Yin looked at the three people and felt gratified that Su Li had such subordinates. She did not forget to reply, "She is back indeed. The intelligence of Julie region has been sent. You don't have to worry too much." "Master, you came back at the right time." Yin Zai relaxed his eyebrows and sighed. "I didn't expect Brother Qinglan to be from the Tianyin tribe. If the tribe hadn't been destroyed this time, I would have thought it was the Yi family in the north. Now I think that Brother Qinglan's means are evil, which is indeed in line with the characteristics of the sex in Jili region. Since the Tianyin tribe has been destroyed, Brother Qinglan doesn't have to worry about being chased down." Dongfang Wuxue nodded with a smile. "Those who do evil are doomed to destruction." Speaking of which, the Tianyin tribe was also one of the holy sects that participated in that year. Now it is reversed and is sought for revenge. What a happy ending. "Well, you guys can't stop talking." Hua Yin rolled her eyes. "How long has it been since the incident of Ghost Region last time? Another holy sect was destroyed. Qingshui's circle is in troubled times. You should be careful when you go out. Don't fail miserably." "Of course we will." In the adytum of the forbidden area in the back mountain, the lights were flickering. Su Li stared at her shadow, which was growing up from a baby. In another 12 to 14 hours, it would be fully grown. "Master, Master!" Black Lotus shuddered out of the ring. Looking at the evil ghost that was being reborn, he said with difficulty, "Master's talent. Is it the indestructible body?" Su Li raised her eyebrows, showing a look of interest. "What is the indestructible body? Tell me, and maybe I can know what my talent is." Black Lotus smiled bitterly. The body of evil ghost had inherited memory, but perhaps because of different clans, Su Li didn't have it. So, she relied on him to explain. In the past, he thought highly of himself and manipulated Su Li with his profound knowledge. But now, after seeing Su Li's terrifying talent, he didn't dare to do that anymore. The indestructible body is the most powerful talent in the inherited talent of evil ghost. As long as the body is not destroyed, the body of evil ghost can't die at all. But the indestructible body in my memory is far less flexible than that of Master. It has no self-consciousness, can't practice and realize independently, and can't integrate consciousness anytime, anywhere, regardless of distance. The more Black Lotus said, the more he sighed, "Master, your evil ghost is just a humanoid bomb that can be controlled freely. As long as any holy sect is taken advantage of by you, it will suffer heavy losses." Su Li nodded. "This method can be used once or twice. People of holy sects are not fools, and they will take precautions in the future. But it is not a loss to rescue the souls of Ling Qinglan and Yin Shui this time." Black Lotus's eyelids twitched violently. It was not a loss to destroy a holy sect unscathed. It was a big gain. 2 days later, Su Li's shadow was fully grown, and her face was ruddy. The evil ghost reappeared in the adytum. The newly grown evil ghost is still weak, and it needs to replenish the ghost energy, which consumes a lot. If it is not necessary in the future, I still can't easily self-destruct. Su Li adapted to the evil ghost for a while, and her consciousness returned to the body. When she walked out of the adytum, the evil ghost instantly turned into black water and integrated into the shadow. "Master, Master, you're finally back." Yin Zai, Dongfang Wuxue, and others greeted her. They looked at Su Li with excitement in their eyes. "Lord Hua is busy with intelligence and has not had time to come." "It doesn't matter." Su Li waved her hand. "You two go to the Su family with me. LVU, you continue to guard the house. If there is an emergency, send me a message." LVU heard the words, and a trace of imperceptible loss flashed in his eyes. Finally, he bowed his head and said, "I see." Su Li noticed his mood, but she didn't say anything. She waved her sleeves and disappeared with Yin Zai and Dongfang Wuxue. The spirit boat flew in the air, and it took a while to arrive at the Su family. Su Li leaned lazily on the soft chair, shaking the spiritual wine in her hand. She lowered her eyes and asked casually, "Zai, how about the 25 sects?" Yin's eye suddenly looked refreshed. Master, in addition to Jin Dao cult, we have cooperated with Su Dying in the past 2 months. We have taken over the last 5 sects of the 25 sections. Our power has expanded 3 times. Su Li nodded with satisfaction. Good progress. Which sect is next? Dongfang Wuxue immediately replied. It is Lei Yuan's sect. Although Lei Yuan's sect ranks 12th or 13th, it has been falling apart because of internal strife. We have sent people to infiltrate and secretly look for the spies of holy sections. Su Li stopped holding the wine cup and thought of all the things when she just entered Hua Jian's sect. Since Lei Yuan's sect has good potential, this time, I will do it myself. Chapter 509. In the mountains occupied by the head branch of the Su family, there were many pavilions. The disciples walked through them and were busy as usual. Since Su Chinka became the only voice of the Su family, the entire 7 branches of the Su family began to operate according to Su Li's will. New clan rules were promulgated one by one, which revitalized the decadent family. At this moment, in the residence of Su Chinka in the back mountain of the Su family, Su Chinka bowed and guarded beside Su Li. After Su Li waved her hand, he immediately consciously retreated to the door and closed the tactical matrix. The light in the room dimmed a lot. Ling Qinglan and Yin Shui sat on the seats opposite Su Li, and they looked more relieved and relaxed. As soon as I came back, I received an urgent message from you two. What's the matter? Su Li tapped the table with her nails unhurriedly, and her eyes were calm. Ling Qinglan glanced at his sister and breathed a sigh of relief. He said, You should have read the message from Taiyanyak Attic. Yes. Su Li nodded and looked at the two with a faint smile. The Tianyin tribe is destroyed, and no one will chase you again. Next, you can rest assured to stay in Jiuzhou region and work for me. Ling Qinglan was silent when he heard the words. The past conjectures flashed in his mind, and he didn't know how to say it for a while. Was Su Jiuzhou in front of him the successor of Su Li? After he got in touch with Su Dying and felt the reality of her AO sword skills, he became more and more suspicious of his previous thoughts. After all, Su Jiuzhou did not show other substantial abilities except for recognizing him that day, which proved that it was her. Everything was just his wishful thinking. Su Jiuzhou neither denied nor admitted it. Her attitude was weird. Ling Qinglan didn't say it, but Yin Shui, who had been very uneasy on the side, couldn't help but sigh. She finally said, Su Jiuzhou, it is not a good thing for me and my brother that the Tianyin tribe is destroyed. Su Li's eyes flashed. She suppressed the soul fluctuation in the evil ghost and chuckled. It seems that you are hiding something from me. Yin Shui glanced at Ling Qinglan, who did not respond. She nodded and continued. Yes, it is related to your master Su. Mr. Su, after the reincarnation mirror was broken, my brother and I returned to the clan. We were suspected to be the people who took away our souls and were imprisoned for many years. As if recalling some bad memories, Yin Shui's face turned slightly pale. She subconsciously hugged her arms as she softly said, The clan is filled with heartless people. Even a genius like younger brother will only become a tool at the bottom of the hierarchy once he is deemed to have lost his loyalty. Yin Shui closed her eyes in pain, trying her best not to recall the tragedy of that day. Su Li waited quietly and did not urge him. After a long time, Yin Shui continued, The Tianyin holy sect's inheritance has a crafty technique called soul splitting. The souls of my younger brother and I were in close contact with the daughter of luck in the reincarnation mirror. It contained a large amount of luck, which was coveted. Soon after we came back from the reincarnation mirror, we were plotted against by the clan. We were imprisoned for hundreds of years and fed with the soul splitting strange medicine. Finally, our souls were forcibly extracted by the grand elder of the clan. We only had consciousness left. We were dying, and our bodies were abandoned in the wilderness. Fortunately, my younger brother and I both practiced secret methods in the reincarnation mirror. We barely escaped with our broken bodies. We each possessed 2 dying people and fled back to the Jiuzhou region. Only in the Jojo region, where the holy sect had many means, can we avoid being deduced the precise direction by the clan and continue to live. You know what happened later? Su Li smiled slightly. Later, when you returned to the Su family, Ling Qinglan turned into Uncle Guang and secretly healed you. Yin Shui nodded. On the day our clan was annihilated, my younger brother and I had a vague feeling that our souls hadn't dissipated. Instead, they had been collected by someone with ulterior motives. Our connection with our souls hadn't been completely severed. If that person had used our souls to do something, it was very likely that we would have died even sooner. Ling Qinglan didn't mean to speak until Yin Shui finished. Since his soul and consciousness were separated, his death was doomed. The only difference was whether he would die earlier or later. Even if he used the secret method to re-practice, he still couldn't cut off the connection with the original soul. If his soul died, his consciousness would also dissipate. Originally, when the first Holy Sun absorbed his soul, it would take him hundreds of years to digest it. Then he could live for another hundreds of years. But now his soul fell into the hands of others, and the date of his death was not fixed. Su Li nodded and then said with a smile, "So, Chulu, what do you mean by saying so much?" Yin Shui was stunned and looked at Ling Qinglan with uncertainty in her eyes. Chulu was the name she used in the reincarnation mirror. Seeing that she didn't speak, Su Li turned her head and still smiled. "Am I wrong? Chulu, I have seen the ruthlessness of your Yin family. Now do you still want to continue your surname Yin, or do you want to follow the surname of the Ling family? Let me say this up front, I don't have a good impression of the Ling family." Facing the sharp gaze, Yin Shui couldn't help but avoid his eyes and whispered, "Does it make sense? My brother and I are both going to die. What's the difference whether we change our names or not?" "Of course, there's a difference." Su Li smiled and stretched out her hands to open her palms. Two groups of souls flashing with colorful light rose slowly. If Su Li didn't control them, the two groups of souls would disappear into their heads in an instant. This is... Yin Shui, no. Chu Lu stared at the two groups of souls in front of her with her eyes wide open. Her lips trembled uncontrollably. "This is mine and Mo's." Although Ling Qinglan was not as miserable as Yin Shui, his eyes also lit up with unprecedented light. If he could see no hope and couldn't struggle, who would be willing to die? "Why are they in your hands?" Ling Qinglan finally spoke. His voice was a little hoarse because he suppressed his emotions. Su Li put away the two groups of souls, shook her head, and chuckled. "I remember I said that I hate the holy sections. The Tianyin tribe can only be regarded as interest." Ling Qinglan and Yin Shui were suddenly shocked. They were so angry that they couldn't speak for a long time. "You." Ling Qinglan opened his mouth, only feeling that his heart was filled with countless confusion and shock, and he didn't know what to ask for a while. Su Li got up and left directly, leaving the two statues of a man and a woman. "Take good care of your bodies. I will change your souls in a few days. Whether I am the successor of that person or not, as long as you accompany me to destroy the holy sects, your identity is not so important." Su Li wore the costume of the Naiman branch disciple of Lei Yuan's sect and walked on the stone road in the mountains. There were 5 forces in the hands of the Ni sect. The integrated power was no less than any of the top 10 sections. "I haven't seen Fan Zisong for a long time. I can take the opportunity to meet him." Su Li narrowed her eyes. If she hadn't entered the secret realm of shattered spirits with Fan Zisong's help, she would have to spend a lot of time practicing on the Chuangxing path and delay the progress of revenge. "I heard from Hua Yin that Fan Zisong was amazing after he entered the sect. Now he has reached the middle stage of Yuanying realm and ranks 5th among the inherited disciples. I have smelled a familiar smell on him. He must have been secretly helped by someone." When she was thinking, she suddenly felt someone push her back. "Junior sister apprentice, why are you still in a daze? If you don't hurry up, you'll miss the fun." Su Li looked back and saw a young man who looked quite simple and honest. She asked with interest, "What fun?" The young man was stunned for a moment, and then his face changed. "Oh no, it's too late." Then he ignored Su Li and hurried up the mountain. Su Li raised her eyebrows and followed him unhurriedly. At the same time, the carrier rune in her hand lit up, and Yin Zai's voice came. Master, today is the day of the Thunder Pool major competition of Lei Yuan's sect. It is also a means to test the strength of inherited disciples. However, in the sensitive period when the two deputy lords are fighting for real power, I am afraid that the Thunder Pool major competition is very complicated. Master, your senior fellow apprentice is also involved. The voice in the carrier rune gradually faded. Su Li's figure flashed and disappeared on the spot. Lei Yuan's sect by the Thunder Pool in the back mountain. The Thunder Pool, which used to be cold, was extremely noisy and overcrowded at this time. It was not until the elders of the sect came out to maintain order that the Thunder Pool was empty. Only 6 inherited disciples were still standing by the Thunder Pool. The atmosphere was stiff. Fan Zisong clenched the sword in his hand and looked serious. But when he saw the white-haired young man standing closest to the Thunder Pool, his heart sank. Boy, I have said that you shouldn't choose a side in this battle for the position of Deputy Lord. The familiar voice of the old man in the jade token came to his ears. Fan Zisong's eyes were fierce. He took a deep breath and responded with thought. Practitioners fight against nature. If I don't even have the thought of fighting, my cultivation will be in vain. Besides, I have climbed to the position of inherited disciple. Even if I don't choose, someone will force me to choose. This time, I'm just unlucky. He closed his eyes for a moment and suddenly opened them again. He clenched the sword in his hand more tightly. Now, I can only fight. If I lose, I will admit my defeat. At this point, Li Yin in the jade token could not say anything more. He sighed deeply. He had decided in his heart that if this boy really became a victim in the battle, he would let him escape even if he exhausted his soul and fell into a deep sleep. After getting along with Fan Zisong for hundreds of years, he had long regarded Fan Zisong as his own disciple. A teacher for a day was a father for a lifetime. In the past, Fan Zisong bought elixirs for him to maintain the consumption of his soul. Now it was time for him to fulfill his responsibility as a father. It's time. Let go of the Thunder Pool. According to the agreement between the two sides, those who persist to the end will be qualified to enter the Mount Fonglei. On the stone platform above the lightning pool, after the great elder finished speaking, he opened his eyes and looked at the void behind the two sides. After that, he closed his eyes again. The lord of the sect was about to abdicate, so he didn't care much about it. The two sides were fighting fiercely, but it would not affect his power. Therefore, even if both sides offered him something that tempted him, he finally accepted it and chose to be neutral. In the end, it depended on which one of these little guys could help his descendant win the right to enter the Mount Fonglei. The Mount Fonglei was just a secluded place of practice in the Lei Yuan sect. It was nothing, but its meaning was different. Only the lord of each generation was qualified to enter the Mount Fonglei to practice. After the Thunder Pool major competition, whoever entered the Mount Fonglei would be the lord of the sect. Chapter 510. Outside the Thunder Pool, there was a hubbub of noise from the crowd of disciples. Nobody noticed that another slender figure had squeezed to the front of the crowd. Seeing Fan Zisong standing beside the Thunder Pool, Su Li smiled faintly. Fan Zisong's pneuma was extraordinary and his temperament had changed. I haven't seen him for a long time. My senior fellow apprentice seems to have developed well. She smiled and inadvertently glanced at the void behind the two parties in the field. She opened her lips slightly. Haven't you found the spy of the holy sex? Yin Zai's voice came quickly. The spy of the holy sex of Lei Yuan sect is extremely secretive and has not contacted with the spies of other holy sections. It is extremely difficult to find him in a short time. Su Li looked at Fan Zisong and smiled slightly. Forget it. I have another way. You can leave now. Don't alarm Lei Yuan sect. Yes. When the pneumas of Yin Zai and others faded away, Su Li watched the playful fight with great interest. Whoosh! The hawk-nosed young man's eyes were cold. He waved his hands, and the flying swords were divided into 64 swords, which penetrated into the Thunder Pool. For a moment, the lightning flashed, and a violent breath shrouded the stone platform. "Junior fellow apprentice Yuang, look at my 64 thunder swords," he shouted coldly, and changed the gesture again. The 64 flying swords seemed to be alive, and each stabbed at the vital parts of Wang Yuang. It was impossible to hold back in the fight for orthodoxy. The hawk-nosed young man used his killing move. Clang, clang, clang. Wang Yuang's expression changed again and again. The flying swords in his hands continued to rotate and danced into a round shield. The huge force hit the round shield, which made him retreat constantly. Soon, he retreated to the edge and was on the verge of collapse. "Lin Siqing, you're going too far," he shouted loudly and emptied his hand. Another oddly shaped magical treasure was brought out and submerged in the lightning pool. Boom! A thunder snake swam out of the thunder pool and bit Lin Siqing with its big mouth. Lin Siqing laughed and fought with it crazily. Just in time, it happens to verify my secret skill of body refining. Under the stone platform, Fan Zisong looked tense and worried. Senior sister apprentice, senior fellow apprentice Wang is in a bad situation. Standing in front of Fan Zisong, the heroic woman's eyes were sharp. She stared at the white-hot battle in the field and sighed softly. Her voice came into Fan Zisong's ears. "Wang Siqing, the third successor disciple, has already exerted 120% of his strength. I didn't expect that Lin Siqing had been hiding his strength. He is not the fourth successor disciple at all. Now he has revealed his trump card. Even I dare not take it easily. We lost." Fan Zisong's emotions flowed inexplicably. Since he got rid of Wang Yu's control, he joined the Lei Yuan sect. With the help of Li Yin, he quickly distinguished himself and was defeated by immortal Qi Ying, the deputy lord of the sect. His luck was pretty good this time. Although his master's temperament was cold, he was very affectionate and took good care of his disciples. His senior sisters and brothers were also very good to him. Senior sister, Fan Zisong wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. He wanted to say that he had also hidden a lot of strength. Although it was a little worse than that person, it was not much worse. But would that work? At present, they had lost one game. In the remaining 2 games, neither he nor his senior sister could win against that person. Fan Zisong looked at the side face of his senior sister apprentice. Although she didn't show disappointment, he could feel her strong unwillingness. "You don't have to worry. Even if our master loses, we will be excluded from the sect at most." The heroic woman transmitted the sound. She turned her head and smiled slightly. "There are countless big regions in Qingshui Circle. I don't believe that there is no place for us." "Okay." Fan Zisong nodded hard and responded, but he felt bitter in his heart. He knew that his senior sister apprentice was just comforting him. Without the protection of the sect, how could the Lei Yuan sect let them leave Jiuzhou region alive? At that time, there would be a bloody battle. He suddenly looked up at the indifferent white-haired man on the opposite side. The white-haired man sensed Fan Zisong's gaze, turned his head, and showed a faint smile. An obscure pressure came over. Fan Zisong's face changed slightly. He snorted coldly and waved his hand to easily disperse the man's deterrence. The white-haired man was slightly stunned. He immediately shook his head with a smile and looked back at the stone platform. The heroic woman who wanted to protect her junior fellow apprentice was surprised when she saw this scene. "Junior fellow apprentice you?" Fan Zisong smiled and said, regardless of the objection of the jade token, "Senior sister apprentice, how about leaving the first inherited disciple to me?" The heroic woman was stunned. She looked at the junior fellow apprentice who had just joined the sect for a few years, but was already very familiar with her. She felt strange for a moment. "Senior sister apprentice, believe me this time, if I can defeat him, all the difficulties can be easily solved." Fan Zisong made a decision in his heart. He no longer hesitated and persuaded her again. The heroic woman's heartbeat accelerated slightly, and her beautiful eyes widened. "Are you really sure?" She had just seen that the skill of her junior fellow apprentice was extremely inconsistent with the strength he showed. "I can't guarantee it." Fan Zisong smiled bitterly, but the heroic woman smiled and patted him on the shoulder. I'm no match for him. Since you want to have a try, go there. Master is behind us, and we don't have to worry about our safety. Don't feel too much pressure this time. Just take it as a chance to verify your cultivation. Understand? Hearing the senior sister apprentice's exhortation, Fan Zisong felt warm in his heart. He nodded gently, but he was more determined to use that skill. Bastard, do you still recognize me as your master? If you use that skill in front of others, it will definitely cause countless troubles, and no one can protect you. Fan Zisong took a deep breath, calmed down, and responded in his consciousness. Seniorly, if I can't win the orthodoxy of Lei Yuan's sect, I will face endless pursuit. I don't know whether I can survive or not. Is there any difference between using it or not? The jade token was speechless for a while. After a long time, a sigh came out, and there was no response. Puff! The thunder snake's head was cut by countless flying swords, and it collapsed. Wang Yuwang's face suddenly turned pale. He spat blood from his mouth and flew down the stone platform. The heroic woman hurriedly stepped forward to catch her junior fellow apprentice who fell down and said sternly, "We admit defeat." After that, Lin Siqing, who was ready to rush down the stage, stopped and turned to leave the stage unwillingly. The task given to him by his senior fellow apprentice was to kill Wang Yuwang completely. He didn't expect that Wang Yuwang's strength was ordinary, but his life-saving ability was quite good, so he escaped. In the first round, the Fengguang lineage wins. The first elder announced the result expressionlessly and looked at Fan Zisong with a trace of pity in his eyes. But it was just a trace. Every time the lord of the sect changed, there was always a bloody purge. He had lived for more than 3,000 years, and such a scene had been common to him, so he didn't feel emotional. Today, the Zhongjin lineage is doomed to be eliminated. He thought in his heart, looked at the Fengguang lineage, and said loudly, in the second round, the white-haired man waved his hand, and the short young man standing beside him immediately stepped on the stone platform. He stared at Fan Zisong and said aggressively, "Ding Fan, the fifth inherited disciple of the Fengguang lineage, please give me some advice." Before he finished his words, he saw the heroic woman beside Fan Zisong suddenly jump onto the stage with a heavy sword in her hand in front of her. The sword was surrounded by silver light, exuding a breathtaking, killing intent, and her eyes were shining. "I'll fight with you." Ding Fan was stunned instantly. What was this? Wu Lin, the second inherited disciple, could beat 10 of him with one hand. Whoosh! Seeing Wu Lin's hands making a gesture, and the heavy flying sword made a loud sound, Ding Fan was shocked. He didn't care about his face anymore and shouted, "I give up! I give up!" Ha! There was a burst of laughter among the onlookers. Although it was a rational move for Ding Fan to give up, how could it not make people laugh when they saw the superior inherited disciple in such a mess? Ding Fan returned to the white-haired man, and his face had already turned red. As a genius of the sect, when had he been so humiliated? Well, since the Zhongjian lineage doesn't forget to humiliate us before its death, I don't need to be merciful. The white-haired man stood up, and his calm voice came into Ding Fan's ears. Ding Fan was suddenly refreshed and got rid of the distracting thoughts. He looked at the back of the white-haired man, slowly walking to the stone platform with admiration in his eyes. Coming, Fan Zisong took a deep breath and was about to go forward when he suddenly heard a sigh. "Don't force yourself. I don't want to lose any disciple." Fan Zisong felt sad, but he completely calmed down. He walked to the stone platform and stared at the smiling white-haired man. "I'll be your opponent." Huh? Suli looked at the white-haired man in the platform and suddenly made a slight sound. This person has the pneuma of the divine thunder of the 5 elements, but it seems to be the same, with a trace of falsehood. That is the fake divine thunder. If I am right, it is the white thunder of the fake divine thunder. This person can get the mark of the white thunder, so he has a good talent in the thunder circle. Black Lotus's voice came at the right time. The Lei Yuan sect can breed the mark of the white thunder. Maybe it can further evolve your divine thunder of earth. This trip is worthwhile. Suli nodded gently. After she repeatedly violated the test of thunder, the divine thunder of earth in her body also bred a trace of the pneuma of the divine thunder of gold. But because the energy of the thunder was not enough, it was not mature enough. While she was thinking, the fight had begun on the platform, which caused many disciples to exclaim. Fan Zisong, the sixth inherited disciple, can actually survive dozens of moves from the first senior fellow apprentice without showing any sign of defeat. Even the second inherited disciple is no better than him, right? No wonder the Zhongjian branch temporarily changed disciples before. It turns out that Fan Zisong is the trump card of their branch. However, the first senior fellow apprentice is the favored one who got the mark of the ancestral thunder. Even if Fan Zisong's performance is extraordinary, I am afraid that he is no match for the first senior fellow apprentice. Swish! Fan Zisong's body movement was strange. He teleported to another place, and a thunder hole suddenly appeared where he was. Countless white thunderbolts spread along the stone cracks, and gravel splashed. If the stones beside the thunder pool hadn't been tempered by thunderbolts all year round, they would have been completely destroyed. Fan Zisong controlled the heavy sword to block in front of him. He gasped violently, trying to ease half of his paralyzed body. Compared with ordinary thunderbolts, the paralysis of the ancestral thunder is too strong. My Xianlei sword can't block it at all. Give up. You are no match for me. In the white thunderbolts, the white-haired man walked over, like a son of God bathed in the thunder. You have been in the sect for only 1 year, but your cultivation has made rapid progress. You have reached Yuanying realm. You are a good seedling. Why don't you turn to the light and join my Fengguang branch? Fan Zisong's eyes became sharp. No way. The white-haired man stopped smiling, and his voice was still indifferent. In this case, I can't let you live. Chapter 511. Crack, crack, crack. The white-haired man took a step forward, and the white cracks under his feet instantly spread to Fan Zisong like a spider web. A white dragon phantom appeared faintly. Seeing the white dragon phantom, the first elder couldn't help but show off. Immediately, he looked at the white-haired man with more appreciation in his eyes. This boy is so calm that he doesn't look like a young man. Now he meets Fan Zisong and shows off. Haha, he's a child after all. Fan Zisong is unlucky to meet him at the same age. The ground shook violently, and it was almost impossible to stand, as if a monster was rampaging. Fan Zisong's eyes shrank, and he jumped into the nothingness without saying a word. When he was about to resist, he saw a weird smile on the white-haired man's face. Oh no, he shouted secretly. Before he had time to react, countless white thunderbolts fell from the sky without warning and completely drowned him. Junior fellow apprentice. The heroic-looking woman was shocked. She was about to rush to the platform, but she was suppressed by the first elder. First elder, you. The heroic-looking woman showed hatred in her eyes, while the first elder looked indifferent. He made up his mind to kill Fan Zisong for the white-haired man, so he naturally couldn't let the heroic-looking woman stop him. Stop! A cold shout came from the nothingness. The grudge between you and me should not affect my disciple. Let Zisong go, and I will give you the position of Lord. Haha, the position of Lord is mine. How can you get it to me? You. The two breaths in the dark were at loggerheads. When they were about to fight, they suddenly heard a loud bang on the stone platform, and then a bloody figure broke free from it. I'm not dead. Fan Zisong was stunned. He was accidentally drowned by the white thunderbolts just now. He was paralyzed and couldn't move at all. He couldn't even use his trump card. How could he suddenly come out? You actually escaped from my cage? The white-haired man's smile faded, and he looked a little surprised and doubtful. Even he couldn't get rid of this move. How could Fan Zisong? Well, in this case, I'll make another move. The white-haired man looked a little cold. In order to avoid trouble, he quickly condensed a huge thunderball on his fingertips and threw it at Fan Zisong's face in an instant. Fan Zisong's face was evil, and a trace of evil suddenly rose in his eyes. Just as the evil was about to pour out along the tendons and vessels of his arms, Su Li, who was standing in the crowd, curled her lips slightly and flicked her fingers. A trace of undetectable electric arc poured into Fan Zisong's body. Crackle. Fan Zisong trembled all over. He only felt an inexplicable numbness rising from his limbs and bones, which abruptly interrupted his evil practice. At the same time, the white thunderball seemed to meet its natural enemy. It annihilated itself before it completely touched Fan Zisong. What? Everyone was shocked. The white-haired man's face changed slightly. When he was about to cast another spell, Fan Zisong, who was trembling all over, suddenly stretched out a hand. A weak golden thunderbolt shot out from his fingertips. Chi! The white-haired man's body stiffened. He lowered his head and saw a large patch of charred skin on his chest. His face was filled with unwillingness and confusion. He opened his mouth to say something, but in the end, he couldn't say a word. His vision went black, and he collapsed on the stone platform. A gust of cold wind blew. Everyone shuddered and revealed a dazed expression. Just now, what happened? Fan Zisong was even more confused. He didn't understand how he defeated the opponent from beginning to end. First Elder coughed dryly. Looking at the two deputy lords who had shown themselves, he didn't know where to start for a while. According to the situation just now, the Fengguang branch was sure to win the major competition. How could the Zhongjian branch win in a twinkling of an eye? Thinking of this, First Elder's face suddenly darkened. In order to make friends with the first inherited disciple, he had completely offended the Zhongjian branch. First Elder, it's time to announce the result. The cold-looking man in a Taoist robe came out. Although he had many doubts about his little apprentice, it didn't prevent him from being happy. Deputy Lord Miexen, First Elder hesitated and deliberately slowed down his speech. As expected, he heard another cold voice. Wait, Miexen, your apprentice didn't use the orthodox magic arts of our Lei Yuan sect. This competition doesn't count. Hearing such shameless words, the man in a Taoist robe laughed instead of being angry. Chiyu, I didn't say anything when you taught your apprentice the forbidden white thunder skill in private. Now, my apprentice just used the thunder skill that you have never seen, but you regarded it as an evil method. You are in charge of the Lei Yuan sect. Immortal Chi Yu's face was ferocious for a moment, and then became gloomy again. He turned around and picked up the white-haired man on the ground, and left without saying a word. Seeing this, First Elder knew that Chi Yu was in the wrong, so he didn't argue with him anymore. At the moment, he couldn't be biased anymore, so he smiled cheekily and said, Congratulations, Immortal Miexan. The qualification to enter the Mount Fenglei belongs to your apprentice. Miexan glanced at him lightly, and also left with Fan Zisong, who was wounded all over, without saying a word. Seeing this, First Elder was not annoyed. He waved his sleeves and left. The crowd gradually dispersed. Suli looked thoughtfully at the direction where Miexan left. After thinking for a moment, she also turned around and left. As the deputy lord of Lei Yuan's sect, Miexan's mountain peak had one of the nodes of the large tactical matrix with the densest nimbus in the Lei Yuan sect. At this moment, Fan Zisong no longer trembled, and the blood on his body was cleaned up. But black mud was discharged from his body from time to time. Seeing that his apprentice's injury was stable, Miexan withdrew his hand and frowned. Someone injected a strange kind of energy into you. It not only helped you defeat Gue Baizi, but also help you wash your tendons and marrow and improve your root bone. Zisong, how did you feel at that time? Fan Zisong omitted the evil method and answered honestly, I don't know. I just felt that when the thunderball came, I was about to avoid it. Suddenly, I was numb all over, and every muscle was trembling. I couldn't control myself at all. Miexan raised his eyebrows slightly, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. Is it possible that a senior helped you secretly? Fan Zisong was also very strange. He asked seniorly in the Jade Token, but only got a supercilious look. Even if I squeeze out my soul, I can't get a trace of that level of power. Maybe you have a good relationship with a senior. It's really good luck. Miexan frowned at his apprentice and showed a rare faint smile. Since you can't figure it out, don't think about it anymore. Have a good rest, and prepare for the trip to Mount Fonlay 3 days later. That place is very dangerous. It's hard for you to protect yourself with your cultivation. I'll go with you." "Yes, master." Fan Zisong felt warm in his heart and nodded. Then he worried, "Will Chiyu?" Xin shook his head and said softly, "If he still wants to continue to compete with me for the position of Lord of the Sect, he won't mess around. You can rest assured." Fan Zisong nodded. After sending his master away, he immediately began to heal himself. 3 days passed in a flash. During this period, perhaps because of the master's order, senior sister apprentice Wu Lin and senior fellow apprentice Yu Wang didn't appear. Fan Zisong went through all the people and things he met in his memory. From beginning to end, he didn't find that he had a good relationship with any senior. However, Li Yin and the Jade token showed surprise and doubt from time to time. He seemed to have guessed something, but he didn't tell Fan Zisong. On the morning of the 4th day, Immortal Xin came as promised and entered the secret place of Lei Yuan's sect with Fan Zisong. They rushed all the way and didn't find that the shape of Fan Zisong's shadow changed for a moment and then returned to the original shape. After a while, they came to a mountain rock engraved with the character Thunder. Mount Fonlay is the real capital of Lei Yuan sect's prosperity. This opportunity is hard to come by. You should cherish it. Seeing that the character Thunder was dim, Xin told Fan Zisong the origin of Mount Fonlay before it was opened. It's said that during the war in ancient times, countless ancestors' thunders fell into the mountain forest. Instead of being destroyed, the mountain forest was contaminated with the characteristics of many thunder spots. The 5 elements evolved many anomalies, and it became the holy land of thunder practice for later generations. Fan Zisong couldn't help but wonder, is that mountain forest Mount Fonlay? Xin couldn't help laughing and shook his head. Of course not. That mountain forest is now controlled by the holy sect of Fonlay sect. How can our Lei Yuan sect occupy it? Now, the Mount Fonlay of our Lei Yuan sect is just derived from a trace of thunder, brought from there by the founder, and its power is much worse. But you don't have to be too disappointed. Xin saw the disappointment in Fan Zisong's eyes and said, "Our Lei Yuan sect has been founded for thousands of years, but no one has been recognized by the ancestors' thunder. If you can really get the mark of the ancestors' thunder, you will be much more powerful than Gue Lazy. You can kill him with one hand." Fan Zisong's eyes brightened. Li Yin and the Jade token couldn't help curling his lips and transmitting the sound. It's just a seedling of the divine thunder of the 5 elements. It has been cultivated for thousands of years, but it's only half dead. It eats a lot of spirits. Even if you get it, you can't afford to raise it. Your master has some savings, so it's possible. You'd better practice Chiyu Xiangong and don't do those useless things. But at this moment, the character Thunder on the mountain rock shone, and the gate on the stone wall opened slowly. "Well, it's time. Let's go in." Xin patted Fan Zisong on the shoulder, and they disappeared in the gate together. After the stone gate was closed, the character Thunder immediately dimmed. The void was silent for a while, and 2 figures flashed. They were Taoist Chiyu and his disciple, Gue Lazy. Looking at the character Thunder that had dimmed, Taoist Chiyu struggled, and he looked at Gue Lazy with a trace of respect. "You really can." Gue Lazy's face was pale. Obviously, he had not recovered from his injury. He changed his previous gentle and elegant temperament and said impatiently and gloomily, "My biological father is the first elder of Wyman branch of the Fonlay sect. He has great power. It's not difficult for him to let you enter the sect. I don't want to expose myself this time. But Xin and his disciple bully me too much." A trace of joy flashed in Chiyu's eyes. A purple stone flashing with thunder appeared in his palm. "I got this thunderstone by accident. It's enough to replenish the energy of the stone gate. Let's go in now." "Okay, let's kill Fan Zisong and his disciple and leave directly." Gue Lazy licked his lips. His tone was evil, and a deep greed flashed in his eyes. Although the pneuma was very faint, how could he not know what it was as he came from the Fonlay sect? Ancestral thunder. Fan Zisong actually is ancestral thunder. If I can get it, I'm likely to be promoted directly to the core, not to be a disciple of Wyman branch after returning to the holy sect. At that time, the crime of leaving his post without permission is nothing. Chapter 512. The sky was illuminated by the dazzling lightning, which made it unclear. It was the first time for Fan Zisong to see such a magical scene. Looking at the lush trees flashing with lightning all over the mountain, he was full of novelty. Immortal Me Xian showed a faint smile, as if he saw himself in those years, but the master who took him to Mount Fonlei had already passed away. Let's walk slowly. The lightning in Mount Fonlei is relatively mild. It can refine your body and improve your strength, which is rare for practitioners. Immortal Me Xian reminded, and Fan Zisong immediately slowed down. He felt a slight numbness under his feet, and his whole body trembled slightly. Soon, a layer of fine sweat appeared, which was extremely comfortable. However, he could feel that the tempering effect of the lightning here was far less than the lightning he had encountered during the lightning pool competition. Over the past 3 days, besides healing his injuries, he also discovered that his aptitude and the strength of his body had increased by more than just a little. If there's a comparison, it is the gap between a firefly and a bright moon. Who on earth helped me that day? Fan Zisong couldn't figure it out, so he could only suppress his doubts in the bottom of his heart. Looking at the towering trees flashing with lightning arcs in the distance, a little tenderness flashed through his eyes. Master's situation is temporarily stabilized. Don't worry too much. When this thing is over, I can go back to Huajian Sect to see my junior sister apprentices. I heard that Huajian Sect has changed its name to Ni Sect, and Immortal Hong Yu is missing. I don't know how they are living. After reminding Fan Zisong, Immortal Me Xian didn't pay attention to him anymore. He stared at the towering thunder trees in the distance, and his blood flowed slightly faster. After the death of his master, there was no practitioner in Zhongjian branch who had passed nature's test and gradually declined. Fengguang branch and Zhongjian branch were hostile to each other, so it was expected that they were forced. Therefore, his situation became more and more difficult. The only way that Immortal Me Xian could think of to break the situation was Mount Fonlei. If I can get the recognition of the ancestral thunder and alarm the old ancestor to come out of practice to protect me, my Zhongjian branch can come back to life and regain the glory of the past. Immortal Me Xian took a deep breath. This time, he got the only chance because of Fan Zisong's inexplicable victory. He must not fail. With their own thoughts, they went deep into Mount Fonlei. Under the cover of endless lightning, neither of them noticed that there were 2 figures not far behind them. Is this the holy place of your Leiyuan sect? Gue Lazy chuckled with slight disdain. It's even worse than the periphery of the holy land of my Fonlei sect. It seems that the old ancestor of your Leiyuan sect who left my sect was just an ordinary person. Chiyu's face darkened slightly, but he smiled again in an instant. Leiyuan sect is small and can't rank in the top in Jiuzhou region. How can it compare with holy sects? Gue Lazy laughed and did not respond to Immortal Chiyu, but he was quite happy in his heart. He said in a slightly relaxed tone, "Don't rush to take action. Let's follow them first. Maybe we can gain more." After refining the white thunder mark with the secret method of the holy sect, he was extremely sensitive to thunder and lightning. He had already smelled another trace of the ancestral thunder. 2 kinds of ancestral thunder. Gue Lazy squinted. No one would complain about having too many ancestral thunder. Chiyu nodded, but didn't think so much. He only hoped to kill Immortal Me Xian and his disciple quickly and go to the holy sect to practice. He had a trump card in his hand, which was inherited from an evil old monster in his early years. It only took him a moment to kill Me Xian. There was no accident. When the old ancestor of Leiyuan sect was alarmed to come out, he had already left Jiuzhou region and went to the holy sect. This was also the reason why he agreed to trade with Ghost Thunder. As Fan Zisong and Immortal Me Xian went deeper, the intensity of thunder and lightning gradually increased. Even immortal Xin felt a sense of numbness, and his physical body was slightly improved. However, Fan Zisong didn't feel anything. His physical body had been improved to the limit in a short time. If he wanted to improve again, he needed to wait until his physical body was completely adapted. Seeing this, immortal Xin immediately sped up. In the second half of the journey, Fan Zisong's face was terribly pale. Finally, he couldn't hold it anymore. He crushed the thunder-isolating matrix in his hand, and the intensity of thunder and lightning dropped by 90%. Suddenly, he felt much better. Hold on for a while. When we get under the thunder tree, all the thunder and lightning will be isolated. Xion's voice came. Fan Zisong gasped and nodded with firm eyes. Although Senior Lia determined that he couldn't get the mark of the ancestral thunder, he still had a fluke in his heart. About 15 minutes later, Fan Zisong and Xion finally came to the huge thunder tree they saw before. As Xion said, thunder and lightning were completely isolated by the shady green tree tower. The manic and tyrannical pneuma faded away, and the fragrance of trees filled the surroundings, which was indescribably gentle. Fan Zisong took a deep breath and recovered a lot. He walked to the root of the huge tree whose top couldn't be seen. His eyes were full of amazement. For a moment, he felt that the human clan was so small. However, he didn't forget the business. He came to his sense soon and asked, "Master, what should we do?" Xion smiled. "I'll do it first. Pay attention to the details. Don't be distracted." Fan Zisong nodded, and then he saw Xion casually stamped on the circle of purple runes on the thick tree root. He said, "The ancestral thunder has a spirit. If you want to get its recognition, you must have a high qualification of Thunder Circle first. When I came here last time, I was still in Yuanying realm like you. This time, I stepped into Huashan realm with Thunder Circle." Speaking of this, Xion slowed down his breath. His eyes were focused and serious. He gently spat out his palm, and the blue lightning surged. In the blink of an eye, the whole runes were submerged. Fan Zisong couldn't help holding his breath. After dozens of breaths, the huge tree didn't change. Sure enough, Xion removed his palm with a bitter smile and shook his head. "Even if my cultivation is improved, I can't attract the attention of the ancestral thunder without changing my qualification. Forget it. Zisong, you have a try." "Okay." Seeing his master stepped back, a glimmer of expectation flashed through Fan Zisong's eyes. He stepped forward and stamped on the runes with his palm. He tried to run the thunder circle of the heavy sword sect to his palm. Soon, the same blue lightning appeared in the nothingness. However, compared with immortal Xion's, the blue was much lighter and closer to sky blue. After a while, Fan Zisong frowned secretly. "There is no movement. Although I have the thunder spiritual root, it is only the second grade. It's reasonable that the ancestral thunder doesn't like me." So, hesitation flashed through his eyes, and then it was soon replaced by a trace of decisiveness. He tried his best to search the few remaining mysterious lightning in his body and poured it into his palm. At the moment when the lightning poured into the runes, the whole huge tree shook violently. Boom! There is movement. Zisong, immortal Xion knew Fan Zisong very well, so he didn't count on him. Now seeing this scene, he suddenly widened his eyes incredulously. Even the calm state of mind that he had cultivated for hundreds of years was broken. Fan Zisong was also excited. He tried to maintain the gesture and not let the violent shock affect him. However, his shadow suddenly moved and completely entered the runes along with the lightning he transmitted. In the pale green nothingness, a black light flashed, and Su Li appeared. She roughly looked at this blue nothingness, and a glimmer of interest flashed through her eyes. "Black Lotus, is there really divine thunder of wood here?" No response. Su Li glanced at her empty ring finger and sensed Black Lotus ring that had curled up to the deepest part of her body. She couldn't help but be speechless. She forgot that Black Lotus ring hated divine thunder most. "Who are you? Why do you come here?" Suddenly, a tender and doubtful voice came in her ears. Su Li's heart shrank. but the smile on her face remained unchanged. She turned around and saw a young boy who was unbelievably beautiful. The young man's skin was pure white, shining like white snow. His soft blue hair reached his waist, and his face was more delicate and pure than a woman's. Sensing the unusual movement of divine thunder of earth in her body, Suli restored her true appearance and smiled more. "My name is Su Jiuzhou. What's your name?" The young man was stunned for a moment, and then he was disappointed and said, "I don't have a name." Although the spirit of divine thunder of wood had transformed, it was as pure as a piece of white paper. Suli quickly guessed what was in front of her. She walked to the young man and waved her hand to show 2 soft chairs. She said in a gentle tone, "How about I give you one? In exchange, I will take you out to see the wonderful outside world." Seeing the soft chair, the young man touched it curiously and then sat down like Suli. However, because he didn't control a trace of the escaping thunder and fire, the soft chair was burned to ashes in a blink of an eye. The young man was stunned and saw that there was still a seat next to Suli. He scratched his head and didn't understand the difference between intimacy and alienation. He sat directly next to Suli and subconsciously sniffed Suli's arm. "You have a pneuma that I like very much." Suli was slightly stunned, and then a trace of yellow lightning escaped from her fingertips. "That's it." The young man stretched out his hand to grab it, and the 2 contrasting thunderbolts suddenly made a harsh, crackling sound. The young man became more excited and looked at Suli as if he saw his own relatives. "Are you my elder sister? I heard from people outside that those who feel close are all relatives." "Elder sister, give me a name." Suli couldn't help laughing. Although she inexplicably had a younger brother with the spirit of thunder and lightning, it didn't prevent her from having a good impression of the young man who was like a piece of white paper. "Since you call me elder sister, you can follow my surname. How about Subai?" "Subai, Subai," the young man whispered and smiled, showing his canine teeth. "I like this name. It sounds much better than what those people call me." "Those people?" Suli knew that he was talking about the people of Lei Yuan's sect, and immediately asked with a smile, "What do they call you?" "They call me Old Ancestor." The young man sniffed and said with extreme disgust. Suli couldn't help but cover her mouth and chuckle. "Come with me. Staying here will only limit your growth." "Okay." The young man nodded without hesitation. He didn't know what refusal was, but soon he was worried again. "Elder sister, I haven't eaten enough for a long time. If I go out with you, will it make you hungry?" Suli shook her head and laughed. She immediately touched the young man's soft hair, and her eyes were as soft as water. "What a good boy." "There are so many thunder and lightning tests here that I can't finish them." Chapter 513. Under the giant tree of Mount Fenglei, the smell of blood pervaded. Fan Zisong looked at his master, who spat blood and fell to the ground. No one knew whether he was dead or alive. He was shocked and angry. Clap, clap, clap. Crisp applause accompanied Gue Lazy's arrival with a smile. "Immortal Chi-Yu has such a magic weapon. It's really an eye-opener for me." Immortal Chi-Yu withdrew his palm print. At this moment, his whole body was full of vigor and blood, and strange runes appeared around him from time to time. He looked at Fan Zisong expressionlessly, as if he was looking at a dead man, but his tone was flattering. "You flatter me, High Sect. I have to rely on High Sect when I enter holy sects in the future." As he said, he casually threw away the broken bloodstone in his hand. "Let's get what you want and leave immediately." After listening to their conversation, Fan Zisong connected with the common sense of holy sects that seniorly told him and immediately understood the reason. He knew that he couldn't escape, so he simply gave up. He looked ferocious and laughed. "I see. Gue Lazy, you are a spy of holy sections. You are just an exiled person of holy sections. How can you get the mark of ancestral thunder to turn over a new leaf? Don't even think about it." As he said, he was about to take down his hands that were printed on the runes. Gue Lazy's face changed slightly. With a gloomy expression, he shouted coldly, "Stop him!" Immortal Chi-Yu felt something was wrong, but he had already injured me Xian seriously. There was no turning back. Even if he realized that he was deceived by Gue Lazy, He had to continue. His figure flashed, and he wanted to hold Fan Zisong's hand. But he was still one step late. Fan Zisong sneered and withdrew his hand slowly. The shaking giant tree suddenly calmed down. "How dare you?" Gue Lazy shouted angrily. He made a gesture in his hand, and a white lightning shot to the runes, but it hit nothing. All of a sudden, boom, when everyone was shocked, there was a loud bang on the ground. The giant tree, as high as Yinchuan, began to shrink rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared in a pocket cave. A petite figure with a delicate figure appeared in front of everyone. Fan Zisong stared at Su Li's face, which was as delicate as that year, blankly. Junior sister apprentice? Why would junior sister appear here? Could it be an illusion? Chi Yu and others were also stunned. Only Gue Lazy had a flash of lightning in his mind. Suddenly, he was enlightened, and his heartbeat accelerated. Ancestral Thunder Spirit. This is the newborn Ancestral Thunder Spirit. According to the sex records, this type of innate lightning spirit is very simple. You only need... Boom! Golden light flashed. The arm-thick thunder and lightning directly blew Ghost Lazy away, and he hung on a branch not far away. His whole body was scorched black, and he fainted. Chi Yu was shocked and felt a chill in his heart. He turned around and fled without saying a word. But before he escaped far, he heard a slight sound of surprise. Then he found that he was getting closer and closer to Su Li instead of being far away from her. What kind of demonic technique is this? Chi Yu was shocked and struggled desperately. But the more he struggled, the faster he retreated. Finally, he stopped in front of Su Li and could not move. Bloodstone, Su Li showed interest in her eyes. She stretched out her hand, and the gravel thrown aside by Chi Yu flew into her hand. The familiar smell came into her nose. The smell of the same origin, but Chi Yu's usage is more ingenious than mine. Although she was in the space of the giant tree just now, she was also familiar with everything that happened outside, including the killing move that Chi Yu used with the bloodstone. "Chi Yu," Su Li said softly. Chi Yu raised his head subconsciously. When he saw the whirlpool in Su Li's eyes, he immediately fell into it and looked dull. Hearing the very familiar voice, Fan Zisong finally came to his senses. His body shook slightly. Before he could ask questions, he saw immortal Chi Yu suddenly bent over and half knelt down. His tone was full of fanaticism and loyalty. "Master!" Fan Zisong was completely lost. He looked up and saw Su Li's familiar eyes and delicate eyebrows. "Senior fellow apprentice, I haven't seen you for a year. Don't you know me?" In the hall of McZin Peak, Immortal Me Xin dismissed all the attendants and poured a cup of tea for Su Li respectfully. There was no lack of gratitude and awe in his eyes. He was seriously injured by Chi Yu just now and was about to die, but the woman in front of him just pointed at him gently, and most of his injuries were healed. Even his cultivation was slightly improved. This kind of ability couldn't be achieved unless she was a powerful person. Even the old ancestor who was practicing in isolation was not much different from her, and he was probably not the opponent of the senior. Although he didn't know how Fan Zisong got acquainted with her, it didn't prevent him from showing kindness to Su Li. "Senior fellow apprentice," Su Li called him softly, and called Fan Zisong, who was still in a daze, back to his senses. Fan Zisong smiled bitterly. The word junior sister apprentice was stuck in his chest for a long time, but he still couldn't make a sound. Finally, he sighed. "Jining, she is very good. I promised her a carefree life. If she wants to become stronger in the future, I will follow her." Su Li said and glanced at Immortal Me Xin. Immortal Me Xin immediately understood. After secretly instructing Fan Zisong to entertain the senior well, he left the hall. Fan Zisong smiled bitterly. Looking at Su Li, who was sitting at the table calmly, he had mixed feelings and a strange feeling in his heart. Was this still the introverted junior sister apprentice? "Senior fellow apprentice, don't worry about it," Su Li said gently. "If you hadn't brought me back to the sect from the mortal village, I wouldn't have recovered my cultivation so quickly. It may be a trivial matter for you, but for me, it's a great favor. Your master is afraid of me, but you don't have to. I still regard you as my senior fellow apprentice. As long as you don't change, I won't change. It was rare for Su Li to say such words sincerely. Fan Zisong was frightened, but he was more moved. It was extremely rare for a powerful person like the junior sister apprentice, who reincarnated to practice again, to put down her pride and tell him the truth. That was right. After experiencing the amazing scene just now, he had obviously regarded Su Li as a powerful person who reincarnated to practice again. Otherwise, he couldn't explain why Su Li became unfathomable in such a short time. Good karma reaps good karma. He had to say that he was very lucky. He just helped Su Li because of his childhood experience, but he would receive such an amazing return. Suddenly, he remembered all kinds of strange things that happened more than a year ago. His eyes changed, and he couldn't help but ask, what about the poisonous spirit-devouring insect? And Hong Yu? Seeing that Fan Zisong returned to normal, Su Li nodded with a chuckle. Yes, I helped you secretly. You don't have to worry about Hong Yu. She died a year ago, and she won't harm you again. Fan Zisong breathed a sigh of relief and smiled, showing his white teeth. He was not a stupid person. He quickly thought of the inexplicable victory 3 days ago and the self-refining of his physical body. It couldn't be anyone except Su Li. You came to Lei Yuan's sect not just to see me, right? After thinking for a moment, Fan Zisong asked. Although he felt that he had a good relationship with Su Li, he was not arrogant enough to think that Su Li would come to help him. Su Li nodded and said with a smile, Senior fellow apprentice, you have the heart of a powerful person. I think you won't refuse the opportunity to become stronger, right? Fan Zisong was slightly stunned, but Su Li didn't say much. She reached out and touched his glabella. Fan Zisong suddenly blacked out and fainted, but there was a golden thunder mark between his eyebrows. This is the mark of divine thunder of metal? Li Yin in the jade token was stunned. He was envious and gratified. All kinds of emotions were mixed together, and he didn't know what expression to show. Fan Zisong really got the mark of divine thunder. He was so lucky. Su Li withdrew her hand. She didn't make any movement, but the jade token hanging on Fan Zisong's neck flew to her. Come out. Su Li's tone was very light, but Li Yin heard the cold thread in it. He immediately looked bitter, and a transparent phantom floated out of it. He bowed and said, Second miss. You are well. Su Li raised her eyebrows slightly and said in a quiet tone, Grandpa Butler, I hope you are well. Many people lost their memory after coming out, but you still remember me. It seems that your origin is higher than I thought. Second miss, Li Yin felt cold. When he saw Su Li last time, she had just been brought into the sect by Fan Zisong. How long had it been? Had she recovered and far surpassed the level of her previous life? She is really the daughter of luck. She gathers the fortune of heaven and earth, and there is no bottleneck in her practice. Fate Ancestor is right. As he thought so, he suddenly heard a series of cracking sounds. He suddenly looked up and saw Su Li spread out her hands, and a piece of jade powder fell. You don't need this kind of thing in the future, Su Li said lightly. She put her palm on Li Yin's head, and the endless ghost energy surged over. Should he continue to be a remnant soul or become a ghost practitioner? Su Li didn't give Li Yin the right to choose. An hour later, Li Yin put on a black robe. He felt helpless and relieved at the same time. Su Li gave him a way to live for the sake of Fan Zisong. Although his ghost body had Su Li's extremely strong personal mark, which made him have to surrender to her, it was better to live than to die. He still had many things to do. How could he die? The daughter of luck has no limit. Maybe it is not a bad thing for me to become like this. Under the influence of the mark, Li Yin's thoughts began to change uncontrollably. Although he clearly sensed this change, he could not feel evil. He even faintly began to think for Su Li and search for useful information for Su Li in his memory. In the future, I will let Fan Zisong take over the Lei Yuan sect. You will assist him by his side until he can take charge. Su Li gave an order, and Li Yin answered repeatedly. Seeing this, Su Li didn't say anything more. She got up and walked out of the hall. Under the guidance of Immortal Mi Xan, she came to a addendum. There was only a stone bed in the addendum. Gue Lazy lay on it, and his chest rose and fell weakly. Gue Lazy is a spy of the holy sections. No wonder what? Su Li said to herself, but immortal Mi Xin didn't understand. However, he soon understood. Master. When he saw Gue Lazy get up from the stone bed, his eyes were confused for a moment, and he directly knelt in front of Su Li. He suddenly felt that his mind was in a mess. When he was about to ask, suddenly a gust of wind blew outside. Chi Yu, who recovered from his injury, came in and bowed his head respectfully. Master, the place where the old ancestor practices in isolation has been found. I will take you there now. Chapter 514. Although the old ancestor of Lei Yuan's sect was in the peak stage of nature's test, he was about to die. He was old and weak, so he closed his 6 senses and practiced in isolation. Su Li easily planted the seal of soul control in his body. So, in just 3 or 4 days, the entire Lei Yuan sect was under her control. Everything happened so fast that immortal Mi Xin couldn't accept it completely. However, he had been in the cultivation circle for many years. When he thought about it carefully, he didn't think there was any harm. Instead, there were many benefits. Since immortal Chi Yu and Gue Lazy were controlled by this person, he would no longer be targeted. In the future, Lei Yuan's sect would be run by Fan Zisong. As Fan Zisong's teacher, he would not be in a bad situation. He comforted himself. Seeing the old figure in the forbidden area bowing to the beautiful woman, he couldn't help but have complex emotions in his heart. This time, Su Li did it in front of him. On the one hand, it was because she didn't have enough ability to stop it. On the other hand, it was because he didn't have a deep relationship with the old ancestor. If the old ancestor was his deceased master, he would make a different choice. Su Li didn't know the inner changes of immortal Mi Xin, and she didn't bother to know it. After solving the biggest obstacle of Lei Yuan's sect, she finally had the first slave of Junior Emperor. Although this slave was useless in the battle, he had lived long enough. It was good for him to explain the practice to Yin Zai and others. As for Fan Zisong, Lin would guide him when he woke up. She didn't need to worry about him. Seeing that they had wasted a lot of time here, Su Li ordered Yin Zai and others to go back and took Gue Lazy with them. It seems that I forgot something. At the gate of the mountain, Su Li looked back at the towering mountain. She waved her sleeves and disappeared in the sky with the wind. Old ancestor, you. In the forbidden area of the back mountain, First Elder widened his eyes and said in a trembling voice, "The Millennium Foundation of Lei Yuan's sect." The skinny old man with dry hair said coldly, "Or you can take the seat on the platform of Lei Yuan's sect." First Elder held his breath and quickly lowered his head in fear. "I dare not. I have my reasons for doing this. You just need to manage the sect well and assist the new young lord. You don't need to know the rest. Understand?" I understand. The great elder nodded repeatedly and heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. After being warned like this by the ancestor, he didn't want anything else. All he wanted was to let go of all the mistakes he had made before, and that was the best result. In a clean, quiet room in the back mountain of an I sect. "Master, that's all I know." Gue Lazy stood respectfully in front of the stone table, his eyes full of awe. Su Li waved her hand. "Go back to Lei Yuan's sect. You are still the disciple of immortal Chi Yu. Don't show any abnormality. If anything happens in Feng Lei's sect, report to me." "Yes, sir." After Gue Lazy left, Su Li returned to her resting place and sat down cross-legged. Divine Phoenix Lightning Sect, she muttered to herself with a thoughtful look in her eyes. 1,200 years ago, Gue Lazy made a mistake in the holy sect of Wind and Thunder and was sent to Jiuzhou region as a spy. He had not returned to the sect until now. However, he still got a lot of information about the major events that happened in the holy sect over the years through his connections. Among them, there was Reincarnation Realm. For the first time, she knew that not all holy sects agreed with the plan of Reincarnation Realm. Feng Lei sect was one of the few holy sects that was extremely disgusted with Fate Ancestor and did not send disciples to Reincarnation Realm. In this way, Suli had a good impression of Fenglei sect. However, that was all. At present, the plan was not finished, and she didn't really have the ability to protect herself in front of the holy sections. If it was not necessary, she didn't want to get in touch with any holy sects for the time being. Thinking of this, Suli stopped thinking and focused her attention on the thing in her hand. This was a tattered booklet. Several pages were missing in the back, but it did not affect her reading the spells recorded in the front. There was a rather complicated pattern on one page. Blood-burning spell diagram. Suli softly read the name next to the pattern and frowned slightly. She knew quite a few strange and uncanny techniques, but this was the first time she had seen such a strange technique. Chiyu used this to stimulate the bloodstone, and his strength soared by more than 3 times in an instant. According to him, he met a dying evil practitioner in his early years and got it. He fumbled for hundreds of years before he accidentally learned it. Suli groped the rough page, stared at the pattern for a moment, closed her eyes, and tried to outline the complete pattern in her mind. But only half of it was outlined, and the memory was inexplicably broken. It's weird. With my current realm, I have a photographic memory, but I can't remember this pattern. Suli was interested and was about to try again, but she suddenly heard Su Bai's pitiful voice in her ear. "Sister, I'm hungry." An hour later, Suli returned to the stone room calmly, and her hair was still faintly charred. Although she could feel that the golden thunder seed bred by the divine thunder of earth in her body had advanced a step, the feeling of being struck by thunder was always uncomfortable. I still have a lot of substitutes, and it's not a problem to feed Su Bai in 10 years. 10 years later, after checking her external incarnation, Suli sighed slightly and began to doubt whether it was right or wrong to abduct Su Bai. But when she thought of the legend of the thunder of tranquility that Black Lotus said, she dispelled the idea of sending Su Bai out. She had a hunch that she must get the thunder of tranquility, or she would not be able to resist some disasters. Taking a breath, Su Li's eyes became clear again. She got rid of the distractions and focused on the diagram. She wanted to ask Black Lotus about the diagram, but since she came back from Mount Fenglei, Black Lotus had been curled up and did not come out. She didn't know what he was doing. Time passed very quickly when she concentrated on practicing. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed. In this year, with the help of Gue Lazy, the spy of holy sects, and Isaac found out most of the spies of holy sects in the 25 sections. Yin Zai and others attacked very quickly. By the end of the year, 19 sects in the 25 sects had fallen into their hands. Such a fast speed naturally caused some trouble, and the remaining 6 sects noticed that something was wrong. But after Suli went out for a trip, Jiuzhou region quickly returned to peace, and holy sects still knew nothing about it. On this day, it snowed in Jiuzhou region, and the mountain behind the snow was covered with white, covering the traces of being struck by thunder for punishment. Suli stood on the top of the mountain, facing the fine snow, but it was blocked by an invisible shield and flew away. Behind him, Yin Zai stood at the side. His aura was long and mellow. He'd taken over a dozen sects and forces in succession, and his temperament had undergone a tremendous change compared to 2 years ago. He faintly revealed a steady and dignified aura that was difficult to shake. But at this moment, there was a trace of respect on his face. "Zai, your practice this year is slow," she said softly, and Yin Zai immediately smiled bitterly. Although he ran around this year, his cultivation did not fall behind. He had broken through to Huashan realm and stabilized in the middle stage of Huashan realm. This speed was enough to be proud of for any core disciple of holy sects, but the master even thought it was slow. "You are right." Even so, Yin Zai still nodded with a bitter smile and did not refute. Suli was suddenly speechless and looked back with a smile. "It's none of your business. I have devoted myself to research this year and forgot to help you practice." As she said, she turned over her palm, and a dozen jade bottles of different sizes appeared in her hand. Each jade bottle was marked with a name. When Yin Zai saw a jade token marked with his name in one of the bottles, he felt inexplicably familiar. Suddenly, his eyes brightened. Although he did not join the Leanly building in the reincarnation world, He also heard that the master's medical skills were unique in the world. The powder refined by the master could greatly improve the speed of practice. Could it be, every bottle of elixir I developed for you is unique? I wrote the usage and dosage in the bottle. Remember not to pass it to the wrong person. Otherwise, the consequences are unpredictable. Suli waved her hand, and all the jade bottles flew up. Yinzai caught them in a hurry and curled his lips helplessly. He did not have the sense of majesty just now. By the way, Master, I got the result of the information you asked me to inquire about. After putting away the jade bottles, he suddenly remembered one thing. He looked serious and said in a deep voice, "Someone indeed used your name to re-establish the Linli building in Qingshui Circle." Su Li's eyes flashed. "Do you know who the founder is?" Yinzai shook his head. "The whereabouts of the fake Linli building is very secretive. After it stole the immortal poisonous insect Sound Acquaintance from the Jiguang sect in Jiuli region last year, it disappeared. There are few traces of it, but there are many rumors in the outside world." "What do they say? Wasn't the holy sect in Jiuli region destroyed last year?" Yinzai said, and carefully looked at Su Li's side face. "Now many people in the cultivation circle say that it was done by the Linli building, and it was done by you, Master." "Oh." Su Li raised her eyebrows and looked back at Yinzai with a faint smile. "What do you want to say?" Yinzai smiled embarrassedly. "Master, please don't blame me. It's really hard to distinguish the truth from the falsehood when some information is put together. I also found out that in the gambling battle of a mortal poisonous insect, the person of the Jiguang sect actually used the same pseudonym as you. The lord of the Jiguang sect is also coincidentally called Xian Jingzhou, and his wife's name is Su Yu." Hearing this, Su Li was suddenly stunned. "What did you say?" Yinzai was also stunned. "Master, you really don't know." Su Li couldn't hear the following words clearly. In her mind, only Su Yu, who died in front of her in the rainy night, full of worry and regret, repeatedly appeared. In this life, did Xian Jingzhou marry Su Yu? Then Xian and... Su Li lifted the corners of her mouth, and a trace of joy naturally appeared in her eyes. At this moment, Yinzai seemed to feel that even the gloomy sky was a little brighter. After a few breaths, Su Li's expression returned to calm, but her tone was much lighter. "It was indeed me who killed the holy sect of Tianyin. Don't spread this matter. As for the Linli building, continue to pay attention to it. If you can find a way to join it, inform me immediately." Although Yinzai had guessed it for a long time, when he heard Su Li admit it, he couldn't help but be shocked secretly. One person destroyed a sect. Master's cultivation progress was even more exaggerated than in the reincarnation world. Chapter 5:15. After Yinzai left, only Su Li was left on the top of the mountain. The snow suddenly increased and fell from the sky like goose feathers. The world became quieter and quieter. Su Li's clothes were thin, and her eyes narrowed slightly. Somehow, she suddenly thought of the first day when she woke up in the second life in the reincarnation mirror. The same heavy snow and the same thin body, but at this moment she could not feel the cold. In a year, she had thoroughly understood the bloodburn diagram. In essence, it was just to outline runes in her mind and create a strange power to stimulate the power in the bloodstone. According to Black Lotus, this was called visualization method, which was quite popular among the human clan in ancient times, but now it was lost and rarely seen. Visualization and the inhibition that I once came into contact with in Song Lei's cave. There must be a reason why the powerful skills that have been passed down in antiquity times have been broken up until now. However, whenever I mention this matter, Black Lotus is vague about it. Is it because I haven't reached that level yet? Rubbing the surface of the ring between her fingers, Su Li withdrew her wandering thoughts and focused on her own practice again. The visualization technique consumed one's soul. Even she couldn't cultivate day and night, so she used the rest time to refine the spiritual jades. The energy of the spiritual jades entered her body, which was very comfortable and could slightly offset her fatigue. In just 1 year, She had eaten up all the spiritual jades compensated by the Huangxing Chamber of Commerce. The Suiyu seed is almost full and almost burst. The feeling of the body can't be wrong. It's time to go to the next level of Suiyu tactics. As Suli thought, the Suiyu tactics in her body naturally showed the breath of breakthrough. In a moment, the next veil of Suiyu tactics was silently torn. The narrow top of the mountain was instantly shrouded by a mysterious breath. The nothingness was twisted like a multifaceted mirror. Even Su Li's figure was completely distorted. Kill. Kill, kill, kill. If the world doesn't tolerate you, you can kill your way out. Family, love, and siblings are all obstacles. Kill them all. The supreme way of peace can be high. The evil ghost behind her suddenly swelled, opened its big mouth full of sharp teeth, and swallowed the black air around Su Li's ear. The evil sound stopped abruptly. The body of the evil ghost fluctuated for a moment, and soon calmed down and returned to its original state. Su Li was interested in dipping her fingertips into a little residual breath and thought. What was this? The test of breakthrough was too simple. Even if the evil ghost didn't swallow it, it couldn't shake her heart. Was her state of mind too strong? Su Li didn't think so. Her state of mind was different from that of ordinary practitioners, but even Yin Zai and others could easily bear the evil sound just now. In this way, the first level of Suiyu tactics that I have broken through is not a big deal. Even among the disciples who practiced this method in antiquity times, the second level was common. My physical cultivation had met the conditions of breakthrough, but I lacked the spiritual jades. Su Li sighed when she thought of it. This was the disadvantage of being a rogue cultivator. You obtain a mental cultivation method for free, but you didn't have the corresponding cultivation method. You could only rely on yourself to explore. If you could erase the time spent exploring, you would definitely be able to reduce the cultivation time to an extremely significant extent. Kuiyu Palace. I'm afraid that there's only a word about this force in the ancient books of holy sections. It is too far away from me. Well, I can't rush to practice Suiyu tactics. I have to start from Chuanxing Path. Maybe the Star Hall will give me a surprise. Su Li calmed down and raised her right hand. It could be faintly seen that there was a layer of almost transparent gray film on her white skin, like a veil. Is this the change brought by the second level of Suiyu tactics? Su Li sensed carefully and tried to control the gray film. Suddenly, she felt that the gray film trembled slightly and emitted a very special smell. In fact, even Su Li didn't know what it was. Besides, there was no target around, so she didn't know the effect. Buzz. After a faint buzz, the special smell spread to the surrounding area of 1,000 feet. It could no longer be maintained and drifted away. However, Su Li clearly felt that there seemed to be a small world within 1,000 feet. She even had a feeling that even if she took action, it would not be noticed by the natural law. Seeing this, Su Li thought of something and took all the smell back in her body. The surrounding area returned to normal. She immediately called softly, Black Lotus, with a black face, reluctantly came out of the ring. He couldn't hide the horror in his tone. Without my guidance, you actually learned the basic level of Suiyu tactics. Su Li tilted her head and her eyes flashed. Her smile was indescribably dangerous. It seems that you've already known the practice method of Suiyu tactics, but you didn't tell me. I didn't. Black Lotus immediately shook his head and said quickly, I only know that Suiyu tactics needs to be practiced with jade energy. I don't know anything else. You deliberately concealed such important information. Su Li still smiled. Tell me the reason, otherwise crack. A little electric light rose from her fingertip, which made Black Lotus's scalp numb. Thunder and lightning were everywhere in Mount Fenglei. In addition, Su Li ran the divine thunder in her body. He had been electrocuted badly enough. It took him a year to recover. Master, please calm down. I'll tell you, okay? Black Lotus was so aggrieved that he wanted to cry. It's true that Suiyu tactics is the core method of Kuiyu Palace. But no one has practiced that mental method except the palace lord herself. And everyone who tried to practice, it was crazy. Suli looked cold. Why didn't you say it earlier? How dare I stop such a powerful person from giving you the method? Black Lotus faintly showed fear on his face, and I didn't expect that you could learn the basic level. Your practice method is not the same as that of the disciples of Kuiyu Palace in those days. You didn't use the Pojing Jade. Suli raised her eyebrows. Didn't you just say that you didn't know the specific practice method of Kuiyu Palace? Black Lotus immediately covered his face. How could he accidentally spill the beans? I didn't say it because I was afraid. I underestimated the people in the world. Underestimated. Suli, forget it. If I want to be the enemy of the holy sex in those days, I can't let go of any means to become stronger. So what if I'm crazy? Even if I'm really crazy, I will be a madman that makes the fate ancestor tremble. Suli's eyes were extremely cold, and her tone seemed to have no temperature, which made Black Lotus break into a cold sweat. Was a master going further and further on the road of madness? The scene of a crazy woman being besieged by hundreds of holy sects naturally emerged in his mind, and his lips trembled suddenly. He felt that even for himself, it was necessary to stop Su Li from becoming a madman. Master, don't rush to extremes. Since the Lord of Kuiyu Palace can practice Suiyu tactics, you may also be able to. When you learn the basic level, just now, did you hear the bewitching sound in your ears? Suli smiled and nodded. Yes. Black Lotus instantly felt that he was trapped, but he didn't think so much at the moment. He frowned and said, "This is a sign of being possessed by the devil. The devil I mentioned is not the person of the evil circle, but the real demons and ghosts. Master, if you are bewitched by the sound, you will lose your mind. At that time, you can't even maintain a human shape. You will be like a pig and a dog, and become a low-level demon who only knows killing." Oh, Suli twisted her fingertips, as if she was recalling the feeling just now. The sound is not a threat to me at all. It can't affect me at all. Master, you are just at the basic level now. Don't underestimate the sound. Black Lotus sighed and thought of those disciples he saw in Kuiyu Palace. Their reactions were exactly the same as Su Li's. Now the sound is not powerful. When it finds that it can't do anything to you, it will be dormant and wait for the opportunity to take action. It can even absorb the pneuma you emit to strengthen itself. When you break through Suiyu tactics next time, the second sound will also be born. At that time, the two sounds will be heard, and the bewitching effect will be greatly improved. Next time will be 3. Wait, Suli suddenly interrupted Black Lotus's words and said strangely, "You said the sound will be dormant?" "Yes." Black Lotus nodded naturally. Anyone who had stayed in Kuiyu Palace knew that although he went to steal, he remembered all this common sense when he was carrying things. Su Li's smile widened, and she chuckled. "I know where the sound is." Black Lotus was stunned for a moment, and then he saw the little master pointed to her shadow and said helplessly, "It seems to have eaten something terrible." Black Lotus was even more confused. Evil Ghost was born to restrain the sound of magic? There was no precedent in the past. Suli was the first, and Black Lotus fell into a long tangle. Suli didn't think so much. There was still a long time before the next breakthrough of Suiyu tactics. For her, Suiyu tactics was just one of the means to enhance her strength. She knew too many things. Sometimes it's not a good thing to know too many things. Back to the addendum, Suli put Black Lotus aside and began to sort out and summarize what she had learned. She extracted the essence and got rid of the dregs, which was extremely necessary before she went on the Chuanxing path again. First of all, physical practice. Thanks to countless natural disasters, her physical body was repeatedly refined. Suishing swordsmanship and punching method could no longer improve the physical strength. She still remembered that when she went on the Chuanxing path last time, she didn't dare to use the 10th move at all. Although that move was powerful, it consumed 80% of her genuine energy. But now, with the 10th move, she could wave hundreds of times in the blink of an eye with her physical body alone. Suli tried to practice the 11th move, but was reminded by Black Lotus that she lacked the characteristics of the school, and it was difficult to comprehend. This was not caused by the understanding, but the characteristics of the school. She didn't plan to leave the Jojo region to find it in a short time, so she had to leave it temporarily. The punching method had been completely reduced to a means of attack, and was no longer a way to improve. As for the harvest in the reincarnation mirror, the Ghost Valley meditation direction had been completely comprehended by her, and even innovated. After combining with her memory in Qing Shui's circle, it completely evolved into a new and unique school of refining medicine. After she realized the destruction sword intent of AO sword skills, all the moves in it were meaningless. Only the quenching method of sword intent was left, and the others were abandoned. After her rebirth, she had the body of evil ghost and then encountered the divine thunder. The evil ghost emerged behind Su Li. She looked back at her past face and smiled. Su Li, you finally live like a human. Chapter 516. 3 days later, Su Li came out of practice, and Hua Yin immediately came to find her. The sects that are easier to control have all been taken care of. The next sects are all connected with each other. The old ancestors have a close relationship. If we pull a hair, it will affect the whole sect. It's not easy to handle. Su Li thought for a moment and reached out her hand. Do you have a relationship chart of the sects? Hua Yin smiled proudly. Of course I do. Otherwise, the network I've built would be wasted. Then she took out a jade slip from the universe ring and handed it to Su Li. Su Li took it and scanned it with her divine awareness. She immediately knew all the relationships between the 25 sections. Seeing Su Li was thinking, Hua Yin didn't disturb her and waited quietly. After a while, Su Li suddenly frowned with interest. What's the matter with the Immortal Cultivation sect? The head of the sect is in the early stage of Yuanying realm. There are many sects like this in Jiuzhou region. Why can't it become one of the 25 sects? That's right. Hua Yin chuckled and seemed to have expected Su Li's curiosity. She immediately explained, the Immortal Cultivation sect ranks last among the 25 sects, but it has been steadily occupying the position of the 25 sects for thousands of years. Why? Speaking of it, it has a lot to do with the strategy of the head of the sect. The inheritance of the Immortal Cultivation sect has long been broken, but it has exported a lot of good seedlings to the other 25 sects in the early years. Now those seedlings have grown into towering trees, and in turn, they protect the Immortal Cultivation sect. In this way, those sects who want to rise would rather choose a more powerful sect to occupy than a small sect with endless troubles. Su Li didn't comment on the answer and said meaningfully, people's hearts are the most changeable, not to mention in the cultivation circle. Don't you think it's strange that the Immortal Cultivation sect can enjoy the treatment of the 25 sects by relying on its favor? Hua Yin was slightly stunned. Hearing Su Li's words, she also felt strange and said in an uncertain tone, maybe it's luck? Su Li smiled and waved her hand. The relationship chart of the Immortal Cultivation sect appeared in the nothingness. She pointed to several places. The inner elder of Tianluo Valley, the chief law enforcement elder of Xianbing sect, the protector of Flying Silver Cult. Every position occupied by Immortal Cultivation sect is not conspicuous, but they have real power. If these people are really loyal to Immortal Cultivation sect, Hua Yin, do you still think that Immortal Cultivation sect is weak? Hua Yan's body trembled slightly, and her pupils shrank. You mean? Halfway through her words, she seemed to have suddenly thought of something and revealed a look of realization. No wonder. Li, if you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten it. When Yin Zai went to conquer the Immortal Cultivation sect, he said that the journey was very smooth. The Lord did not resist at all, and even wanted to send some excellent disciples to the sect. Yin Zai felt strange and refused. The Lord did not insist, so the matter was over. Now I think, Hua Yin shivered inexplicably. Her impression of the Immortal Cultivation sect suddenly changed from weak to mysterious and treacherous. Let Yin Zai contact the Lord of the Immortal Cultivation Sect and arrange a core disciple identity for me, Su Li suddenly said. Hua Yin was shocked and immediately nodded. I will be ready and wait for your news. If the Immortal Cultivation Sect was really so powerful, if she could completely control this sect, she could take in all the 25 sects except Yushu's sect and Zihan's sect at once. This was the fastest shortcut. She was not worried about Su Li's safety. Not many people knew the truth of the destruction of the Tianyin tribe, and she happened to be one of them. Su Li could even bring down the holy sects, not to mention a small sect with a little mysterious atmosphere. The Immortal Cultivation Sect was located in a very remote mountain range. Su Li, wearing a bright and beautiful silk dress of female disciples of the Ni sect, stopped under the dilapidated mountain gate. Glancing at the dark sky, she frowned slightly. This place made her feel a little uncomfortable, but she couldn't tell what it was that made her uncomfortable. On the second day after Yin Zai conveyed the order, the Immortal Cultivation Sect immediately agreed without showing the slightest resistance. Su Li estimated that she still needed some time to consolidate before going to Chuanxing Path. She had nothing else to do, so she directly packed up and pretended to be an ordinary disciple of the Ni sect. It took her a few days to rush here. You must be the new junior sister apprentice. Su Li didn't stand for a long time, and then a gentle voice came. She raised her head and saw a white flowing light falling in front of her in the blink of an eye. The light dissipated, and a young man in a white robe appeared in front of her. The young man's face was a little abnormal pale, and there was a hint of childishness in him. He had waist-length hair and looked less than 100 years old. His body was extremely thin, as if he could not stand the wind. His whole body showed a sense of femininity, but his cultivation was surprisingly high, reaching the late stage of Jindan realm. There was also a kind of obscure energy that even Su Li felt was not simple lurking in his body. The Immortal Cultivation Sect is really not simple. It's right to come here. Su Li thought quickly in her mind, but she seemed to be scared on the surface. She blushed and hurriedly saluted. Su Yu greets you, senior fellow apprentice. Seeing that Su Li was so embarrassed, the young man was also slightly stunned. He originally thought that the Ni sect would send someone not simple to probe them, so the master asked him to go down a mountain to greet them in person, so as not to reveal any flaws. Today, the one he met when he went down the mountain was not a simple-minded female disciple. However, it would take time to see whether this woman was really simple-minded or not. Although there were many thoughts in his mind, he did not show any sluggishness on the surface. He automatically played the role of the elder brother and nodded. It's getting late. Follow me to the mountain to meet the master first. Su Li's eyes showed doubts. Senior fellow apprentice. The master is... The young man suddenly smiled gently. The lord of our Immortal Cultivation Sect. The equally young girl's almond-shaped eyes were round and full of nervousness. She grabbed the corner of her clothes and stammered. Senior fellow apprentice. I haven't washed my clothes for several days. It's not good to meet the Lord, is it? The young man, a moment later, in the main hall of the Lord. The young man stood aside respectfully, leaving Su Li, who was coy all over, standing in the middle alone. She lowered her head uneasily. On the throne, Jiu, the old lord of the Immortal Cultivation Sect in a brown robe, looked at Su Li with kindness in his eyes. Child, raise your head and let me have a look. Su Li raised her head obediently. It was an ordinary face, which was absolutely ugly in the cultivation circle. Jiu stared for a moment, but did not see any trace of the spell that changed her appearance. In Huajian sect, the predecessor of an I sect, there was indeed a female disciple named Su Yu. She was extremely young and was originally the disciple of Immortal Hong Yu. Later, after Immortal Hong Yu died, she became an ordinary Naiman branch disciple of an I sect. It was no problem to trace her origin. So, what did an I sect mean by sending this girl to the sect? Testing? Jiu thought for a long time. Seeing the girl in the hall lowering her head in fear, he couldn't help but laugh. She was just an ordinary female disciple. Even if she was used some means, he had nothing to be afraid of. The rise of NI's sect is full of strangeness. Recently, they have been playing small tricks and contacting with the other 25 sects a lot. They want Jojo region, which is not in conflict with my purpose. All kinds of thoughts passed through the old man's mind, and he simply asked Suli a few questions, which were all consistent with the intelligence he secretly investigated. He smiled and waved to the weak lad. Since you were sent to my immortal cultivation sect, you will be my 12th pro-disciple in the future. Although there are few disciples in my sect, and few people are willing to stay, those who stay are pure and don't scheme against each other like the big sections. What do you think? The girl was completely stunned. It seemed that she didn't expect that there would be such a big pie in the world. But she soon calmed down, with a little hesitation on her face, as if she thought of some bad memories. But she didn't hesitate for a long time and knelt down respectfully. Her crisp and tender voice resounded through the hall. Disciple Suyu, pay respect to Master. Hijo immediately stroked his beard and smiled. The little girl was really simple, and all her thoughts were revealed on her face. He got up, walked down from the throne, and helped Su Li up. Looking at the innocent face with some doubts, he laughed and said sincerely, "It doesn't matter if an I sect doesn't want you. This is your home in the future." The girl's eyes turned red. It seemed that she thought of many bad things, and her voice was a little choked. "Thank you, Master." After that, there was a young girl who was always chattering and asking questions beside the effeminate-looking youth. Most of the time, it was the effeminate-looking youth who answered helplessly, but he did not show any impatience. He seemed to be a very patient person by nature, and he was very popular in the sect. During this period, Suli also got the boy's name, a strange name, Wenhun. A few days later, the news that the Lord had accepted a new personal disciple also spread. Although the Immortal Cultivation sect was a small sect, there were hundreds of disciples in Naiman Branch and Naiman Branch. This news didn't cause any waves, which made Suli feel a little strange. She should be a girl with no schemes at the moment, so she asked directly, "Senior fellow apprentice one, I have become the Master's personal disciple. Don't those senior fellow apprentices and senior sisters who entered the sect earlier than me have any reaction?" In the book pavilion, Suli followed the emaciated boy. After several times of hesitation, she finally asked. When Hun put down the scroll in his hand unhurriedly and said dumbly, "I know you can't bear it for a long time, and you will ask. But this is not a secret. In our immortal cultivation sect, whether you are in Naiman Branch, or personal disciple, you can enjoy the same treatment of cultivation resources. There is no restriction on identity to enter and exit the book pavilion. Why do they envy you?" All the same, Suli blinked her eyes. She was really surprised this time. Our sect is so poor. How can we support so many people? When Hun's pale face blushed, he seemed to be angry and helpless. Our sect is so poor. When you receive the first month's salary, you will know why. The first month's salary? Su Li repeated. She wanted to continue to ask, but saw when Hun's figure flashed and disappeared in the distance instantly. He slipped away. Chapter 517. Seeing that when Hun really ran away, Su Li didn't chase him. She picked up the book that when Hun read just now and opened it. It turned out to be a strange essays, which had nothing to do with cultivation. Although when Hun and He Jio are good to me, and the attitude of the disciples of the sect is also kind, I always feel that the sect lacks something. Su Li opened a page of essays and saw an illustration scribbled on it. It was a barren, deep mountain with a thatched hut standing alone. Is it vitality? Su Li read the essays thoughtfully. The essays were composed of many stories, and each story was quite scary. The first story was about the thatched hut. The scholar went to the capital city for the examination and passed through the barren mountain. After entering the mountain, it rained cats and dogs. He had no place to rest. Suddenly, he saw a light in the distant deep mountain. He was overjoyed and ran to the hut to knock on the door regardless of the mud under his feet. Squeak! The door was open a little, and a beautiful face of a woman appeared. Except for the face, Everything else was immersed in the darkness. Husband, come in quickly to take shelter from the rain. Seeing that she was alone, the scholar immediately waved his hand and said, "It's really inappropriate for you and me to live alone in this deep mountain. Husband, come in quickly to take shelter from the rain." The woman's face was very stiff, and only her lips were moving, as if she could only say this sentence. The scholar felt a little strange, but he saw that the book box behind him had leaked the rain. He didn't care so much, and pushed the door and walked in. Suli turned the next page, but it was blank. She was slightly stunned, and continued to turn the page. It was the next story. She turned it again, but it was also blank at the end. There was no ending. A story without an ending. Suli pursed her lips slightly, and suddenly heard a familiar voice. "Junior sister apprentice, it's late. You should go back to have a rest." Her pupils shrank, and she jumped away like a frightened rabbit. The book in her hand was also thrown out, but was caught by the person who spoke. When Hun turned around with a smile, the candlelight flickered and could only illuminate his face. "Junior sister apprentice, it's late. You should go back to have a rest." "Senior fellow apprentice," Suli called, and felt very strange. With her perception, she didn't find that when Han had returned. "Junior sister, it's getting late. You should go back and rest." When the voice sounded for the third time, Suli was shocked. Looking at when Hun's stiff and pale face like a dead man, she immediately thought of the strange story in the barren mountain she just read. Ghosts really exist in this world? But if there was, then what was she? Her mind was filled with doubts. Suddenly, she sensed an instinctive thought from the evil ghost. "Hungry, hungry." Suli stared at Wen Hun with a stiff smile. It turned out that this thing was for eating. She abruptly turned her gaze and looked at the huge library. Different from the day, the library seemed to have lost its color at night. It was so quiet that even the croaking of frogs and insects outside the door could not be heard. How much food is there? As she turned her gaze away, she didn't see her senior's face suddenly split open from the middle, revealing rows of densely packed teeth. Wen Hun also didn't see that the shadow behind Suli suddenly moved to his feet and opened its bloody mouth quietly. "Junior sister apprentice?" An anxious voice traveled into the library through the gloomy sky. There was a strange vibration in the voice, and under this vibration, the library regained its lively colors. The oppressive atmosphere immediately faded, and various sounds poured into the ears once more. She looked up at the outside of the attic. It turned out to be evening. Wen Hun waved his hand nervously in front of Suli. Seeing her eyes full of doubts, he breathed a sigh of relief. He came just in time. If the junior sister apprentice was harmed by the ghost here because of his negligence, his Taoist heart would inevitably have flaws and turn into an evil thought. "Hey, senior fellow apprentice, didn't you say it was late? Why is it only evening?" Suli pointed to the Jinwu hanging in the sky outside the window and began to test straightforwardly. When Hun looked serious, he glanced at the library, which became gloomy because of Su Li's words, and took Suli away without saying anything. Until they returned to the courtyard where the personal disciples lived, he let go of Su Li's hand and faintly breathed a sigh of relief. He warned seriously, "Little junior sister apprentice, if I don't accompany you, don't go to the library alone." Suli touched her palm. The touch just now was very cold, not like the hand of a living person. When Hun's face suddenly became hot. He hadn't held a woman's hand before. In a hurry just now. Fortunately, Suli didn't care. She just blinked and said why. Seeing the little junior sister apprentice was determined to get to the bottom of it. When Hun remembered the master's entrustment in his heart. He wanted to say something several times, but stopped on second thought. Finally, he couldn't help saying, "Our immortal cultivation sect is not as simple as it seems. Don't ask so much. Practice hard, and you will know it later. There are several dangerous places in the sect. Even I don't dare to go there at night. I will mark them for you. You should remember them." As he said, he took out a blank piece of rice paper and grabbed a writing brush. Suli stood quietly aside and stared at the bird's-eye view of the sect that slowly appeared under Wen Hun's pen. As expected, this scene fell into Hee Jio's eyes. When Hun trusts people too easily. In the dark hall, Hee-Jio's face full of age spots showed a trace of helplessness. However, it may be a chance for him to transform. He accepted Su Yu as a personal disciple. Firstly, he wanted to give an explanation to Ni's sect and maintain the superficial image. Secondly, he wanted to test whether Su Yu was real. If this woman was really a spy of Ni's sect in disguise, he could pretend for a while, but he couldn't maintain the illusion all the time. After observing for a few days, he didn't think there was any big problem. At least, this girl was indeed the little girl named Su Yu. Her born age was also very young. She was simple and straightforward. As for whether she had been played any tricks by Ni's sect, he couldn't see it in a short time. In the following days, Su Li obediently followed Wen Hun's words every day and practiced seriously. She also learned the authentic mental method of immortal cultivation sect. Immortal cultivation tactics under the guidance of Wen Hun. She didn't do anything out of line. After all, the sect was full of weirdness. It was hard to guarantee that Hee-Jio would have a way of prying that she couldn't detect. There were still 9 years before the 10-year period. She still had enough time, so she didn't need to rush at this time. A month passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, it was finally the time to receive the monthly salary. Su Li followed Wen Hun and came to the only large square of immortal cultivation sect. At this moment, there were hundreds of disciples standing sparsely in the square. It looked very deserted in the large square, which seemed to reflect the decline of immortal cultivation sect. A woman in black whom Su Li had never seen stood in front of the long stone table with a cold look and stood silently. On the long stone table, there were hundreds of wooden boxes, each of which was half a meter long and wide. Seeing Wen Hun coming over, she showed a kind smile on her face. But in Su Li's eyes, it was a little ferocious. "Well, everyone is here. You, give out the monthly salary." Hee-Jio stooped and stepped forward. The woman in black showed respect on her face and nodded slightly. She waved her hand and scattered hundreds of wooden boxes on the table. Every wooden box fell into the hands of every disciple accurately, including Su Li. She took the wooden box floating in front of her, and her hands suddenly sank. The things in it weighed at least 100 kilograms. For the sake of prudence, she didn't use her divine awareness to check. "So many. The amount of this month is so enough. I can finally eat my fill. I'm so happy," the disciples in the square said joyfully, which made Su Li feel more and more strange. But she didn't ask more because of the occasion. "This month's salary is brought by your senior sister apprentice you. Thank her quickly." After Hee-Jio spoke, everyone immediately came to their senses and saluted to the woman in black. "Thank you, senior sister apprentice you." The woman in black still looked cold. She just nodded slightly and glanced at Hee-Jio. After getting his consent, she turned around and disappeared into the mountain. "Senior sister apprentice you is..." Su Li couldn't help but transmit the sound to Wen Hun. Although the young man felt it was wrong to whisper under the nose of the master, he still replied, "She is an elder of our sect. She usually practices in the deep mountain. As for the title of senior sister apprentice, it is requested by senior sister apprentice you. She is still young and doesn't want to be called old." Su Li was about to ask something else, but Hee-Jio's voice suddenly interrupted her. "It's not easy for our immortal cultivation sect to persist from ancient times to today." Hee-Jio walked to the stone table and looked at the disciples below. His kind face was a little more dignified. Now the inheritance of the sect is broken, and there are only the first 3 hurdles of the immortal cultivation tactics. The highest level is Yuanying realm. You have to explore by yourself. It's fate for you to join our sect. The sect can't provide you with a place for cultivation, so it's fate, but not fate. If anyone wants to leave the sect today, I will never blame you. Now, if you want to go down the mountain to find another chance, come out." As Hee-Jio said, a pair of turbid eyes suddenly fell on several people in the field. Those people immediately sighed and stood up unwillingly. They then bowed to Hee-Jio and took their leave. There were even some who were reluctant to leave. They wiped their tears as they walked down the mountain. Su Li was confused. She could see that these people didn't want to leave the immortal cultivation sect at all. If Iju didn't call them out, they would definitely not stand out. What was worth staying in this immortal cultivation sect? Could it be, as Gio said, that it was true love? With all kinds of doubts in her heart, Su Li returned to her residence. She opened the wooden box and saw the fresh meat with blood in it. Then she was lost in thought. A piece of meat? No wonder some people say that they can eat their fill. Su Li suddenly understood and felt it was absurd. She had never seen such a weird sect. What was worth staying in a sect that couldn't even eat their fill? Little junior sister apprentice, are you there? When Hun's voice came from outside the yard, Su Li happened to be confused, so she dragged him into the house without saying anything. I know you're confused now. I was the same when I first came here. When Hun looked at Su Li with a smile. Little junior sister apprentice, how long have you not eaten? Chapter 518. Eat. Su Li was stunned and asked with confusion. After practitioners reach Zhuji realm, we don't need to live with a full stomach. If it's delicious food, we can taste it. Why do we need to maintain 3 meals? When Hun chuckled. You're right. Although this piece of meat is not as delicious as you think, its effect is very special. To a large extent, the disciples who stay in the sect don't want to leave because of this piece of meat. I see. What's the effect of this piece of meat? Su Li asked immediately, but when Hun shook his head, this is a big secret of the sect. It won't work if I say it. After you eat this piece of meat and know its effect, don't tell others. Otherwise, something bad will happen. Su Li wanted to ask what the bad thing was, but she was stopped by when Hun's eyes. After a while, when Hun left the yard, he also had to maintain his own practice, and it was impossible to keep an eye on Su Li all the time. Su Li stared at the basin-sized meat for a while, and then got up, covered the wooden box, and took it to the kitchen. Her yard was on the hillside of the main peak, next to Wen Hun's yard. Although the yard was small, it was well equipped, and even an underground ice cellar was equipped. Su Li didn't know the use of the ice cellar at first, but now she understood that it was specially used to store meat. Su Li cut a long strip of fat and lean meat from the meat and returned to the kitchen to boil water. Then she found all the seasonings sealed in the window meticulously. Who knew how many years had passed since the last time he cooked properly? With a subtle emotion lingering in her heart, she was more agile. This scene was naturally seen in the water mirror in front of Igio. Suyu was born in the secular world and had a miserable life experience. She was familiar with secular farm chores since she was a child. Such familiar actions couldn't be faked, and her age and identity matched. The ghosts in the book pavilion didn't kill her, which meant that this woman was not poisoned. After all, those ghosts liked strange secret skills. If they really poisoned her, even when Hun couldn't stop those ghosts. Jio confirmed it again and again, and his expression eased. At this moment, he finally gave up the idea of continuing to probe. We can't wait for the centennial salary ceremony. With Wen Hun's physique, he should guard the sect for only 1 month. There should be no big mistake. Senior brother, I've been in the sect for a month. Why haven't I seen any other senior brothers or sisters? Master also said that I'm his 12th disciple. At the gate of the hall of the sect, Su Li and Wen Hun sat on the cold steps and looked at the deep mountain covered by thick fog. I'm the 11th. Wen Hun sighed and replied. He wanted to go back and cultivate. Why was it that when Master went out, he didn't give the task of guarding to senior sister Yu and the others, but gave it to him instead? Guarding the sect was really boring. After guarding the hall alone for a few days, he finally couldn't bear it and forced Su Li to guard with him. The feeling of loneliness was diluted a little. As for what his master had told him before he left, he had already forgotten about it during those few days of suffering. If an I sect really wanted to send a spy, how could they send such a simple and young junior sister apprentice? Based on Suyu's character, she might have been cheated and still helped others to earn money. How could she be a spy? What about the other 10 senior brothers and sisters? Su Li blinked, and her clear and pure black eyes were full of curiosity. Every time when Hun met such a clean gaze, he didn't want to show his hypocrisy. He could only sigh again and shook his head. I don't know, little junior sister apprentice. I have practiced for less than 100 years. Since I became a disciple of Master, I haven't seen any other senior brother apprentice except you. She reached Yuanying realm in less than 100 years. Suli was slightly shocked, but she showed surprise and envy on the surface. Senior fellow apprentice is amazing. After saying this, she was disappointed again. Compared with senior fellow apprentice's talent, I'm too ordinary. If a senior fellow apprentice hadn't given me the great opportunity of the sect, I couldn't have reached Jindan realm at all. When Hun saw that his inadvertent words hit the little junior sister apprentice and felt ashamed, he said repeatedly, "Junior sister apprentice, don't worry about it. I can practice so fast because of the means given by Master. Before I joined the sect, I was just a little beggar who was seriously ill and dying." As he said, he touched his cold skin. Master said that my life had come to an end. This method can change my fate, and I did survive. Suli wanted to ask what the method was, but when she saw when Hun was in a trance, she thought for a while and didn't do anything. If she kept asking questions, when Hun would notice the problem even if he was stupid. In the twinkling of an eye, when Hun didn't need to guard the hall at night, he returned to the residence with Su Li. He cheekily ate a meal in Su Li's courtyard and then went back. The cold moonlight shone like a layer of silver light on the stone road. When Hun looked back at the small yard standing in the forest and sighed habitually, if Master imparted the holy method to the little junior sister apprentice and went to the book pavilion to practice in isolation for several years, what should I do with my mouth? 2 days ago, he smelled the fragrance from Su Li's courtyard and couldn't help but go to have a look. After seeing that the meat became delicious food in the hands of the little junior sister apprentice, he tasted it. Immediately, he fell in love with Su Li completely and gave a share of meat to Su Li just to have a meal every day. After thinking for a while, when Hun couldn't think of a good way, so he sighed again and turned away. After Su Li saw one Hun off, she closed the gate of the courtyard and returned to the addendum for practice in the house. After hanging up the sign of "Do Not Disturb Practice," everything around was quiet. Only the candlelight in the addendum flickered from time to time, and Su Li's shadow was printed on the wall, like a demon baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. These meats can improve my soul slightly. Su Li pretended to practice, but thousands of thoughts flashed through her mind. She was a little dignified. My soul has reached the perfect nature soul. If I can accumulate a little more, I may be able to break through to the next realm forcibly and reach the half-immortal soul, which is comparable to the Deshang practitioner. Even I can benefit from it, let alone those ordinary disciples. No wonder they are unwilling to leave. After the improvement of my soul, my mind is agile. As for me, I can easily release tens of millions of thoughts in an instant when I reach the perfect nature soul. No matter what I learn, I can learn quickly. Those ordinary disciples may not be able to absorb the power in the meat as perfectly as I can, but as long as their souls are improved a little, they can comprehend the mental method several times faster. After figuring it out, Su Li opened her eyes and breathed a sigh of relief. It's really fascinating, but cultivation pays attention to the balance of yin and yang, and the soul is the yin soul. If the yin soul is too strong, it will lead to the lack of yang energy and damage to the physical body. If it is not balanced to the extreme and explodes, it can even suck up all the nutrients in the physical body in an instant, and the physical body will die instantly. No wonder. Su Li's eyes brightened slightly. In an instant, she felt that the clouds and mist were dispelled, and she was suddenly enlightened. No wonder the immortal cultivation sect was short of vitality. Everyone's yin soul was too strong, which led to the lack of vitality. However, ordinary disciples couldn't feel this. They were only addicted to the pleasure of improving their souls and couldn't extricate themselves. So, Hijio drove them away from the sect. In this way, the puzzle is solved. Only the dangerous places mentioned by when Han are left. While muttering to herself, Su Li glanced at the candlestick, and the candlelight went out instantly. Although she learned from Wen Han that Hijio had left the sect, She was not sure whether Hijio was testing her or not. So, she simply observed for a few more days. Senior fellow apprentice, I'm so bored. What did the master do? Why does he ask you to guard the sect? Suli sat beside the steps, put her hands on her knees, and sighed. Helplessness flashed on Wenhan's pale face, and he also sighed heavily. I don't know. The master said that he would come back in 1 month. Just 1 month. Only 7 days have passed. Wenhan's resentment was more obvious. If he was practicing, he wouldn't feel bored, but he could only stand in front of the hall every day, which was really boring. Why does the hall of the sect need someone to guard it? Suli looked back at the closed door. When the master was there, we also went in, but there was nothing in it. Maybe there is something we can't see. It seemed that Suli reminded him of something. Wenhan looked thoughtful. After a while, his eyes flickered, and he glanced at Suli, who was absent-minded beside him. His lips moved, but he finally held back and didn't say much. If he said too much and scared the junior sister apprentice away, no one would accompany him. Suli saw that he was in a dilemma. She laughed in her heart and didn't insist. The daily intake of the soul power of that piece of meat was limited. Including the piece that Wenhan gave her, it was just enough for her to eat for a month. Hijio left for a month, and she still had enough time. It was better to wait until her soul power accumulated to the limit, and then find out the truth. Suli originally thought so, but on the 10th day, when she and Wenhan came to the hall of the sect, she suddenly felt something wrong. It was so quiet. There was no sound around, and even the sound of the wind disappeared. Senior fellow apprentice, the sky seems to be darkening. Suli looked up, and there was panic and fear in her eyes. She couldn't help but grasp Wenhan's clothes tightly. Don't be afraid. I'm here. It seemed that it was not the first time for Wenhan to see this kind of scene. His expression was very calm, but his body was tight. He kept glancing around, as if looking for something. Suddenly, he fixed his eyes and looked at a void. Suli looked along the void, but saw nothing. With a thought, she transferred part of her power to the evil ghost. The eyes of the evil ghost in the shadow opened a little bit, and a huge and slender black snake immediately came into view. It was about 1,000 feet long, and it kept hovering in the sky. Black mist kept spurting out from the gaps of its scales, turning into strange dark clouds. Hiss! The huge snake head emerged from the hovering snake body. It flicked its blood-red tongue, and 2 red lines as thin as earthworms slowly shot to the 2 people on the ground. This is the bloody red in the deep mountain. Why does it come out? Wenhan was shocked, and his pupils contracted sharply. He grabbed Suli and fled to the hall without saying a word. Chapter 519. Senior fellow apprentice, don't talk. Wenhan clenched the hands behind him tightly, with sweat on his forehead. Gray light surged in his eyes. He saw the gate of the hall covered by the black fog at a glance, and then rushed out. The distance that could be crossed into the hall in a few steps was suddenly stretched at this moment, and seemed extremely far. Junior sister apprentice, don't make a sound. We will be safe after entering the hall. Wenhan transmitted the sound subconsciously, but it was transmitted in the air. He was stunned, and the warm and soft feeling in his right hand immediately became cold and slippery. At this moment, Wenhan's face changed dramatically. He suddenly threw away the thing in his hand, and saw a slender snake was thrown far away. Then it hissed unwillingly and bit Wenhan. Puff! The gray knife light ran from the head of the snake to the tail, and instantly split the red snake into 2 halves, which fell to the ground with a clatter. Little junior sister apprentice was gone. Gray light flashed in Wenhan's eyes, and he shook off the blood on the transparent blade. When he looked up and saw the huge red snake circling above his head, the fear in his heart was drowned by anger. He stopped running away. Little junior sister apprentice, I won't let anything happen to you. In the thick black fog, Su Li's bun loosened, and her long hair draped behind her like a waterfall. She stood alone in the center, letting the wind blow. She looked up for a moment, and then withdrew her gaze. She used the sword to pick up the long red snake on the ground that messed up her hair. Black Lotus, what is this? Black Lotus appeared. He didn't look at the dead snake on the ground, but at the sky. He licked his lips, and his eyes were full of rare excitement. These things are called ghosts. They are your natural enemies, and also good things. Suli raised her eyebrows, and then chuckled. It seems that this thing is also useful to you. Yes. Black Lotus didn't hide his greed. I didn't expect that there are ghosts in the present world. It seems that there are unimaginable sins hidden in Qingshui's circle. Ghosts? Suli repeated and continued to ask with interest. Such an attitude of disregard seemed to annoy the existence in the sky. Its body trembled, and countless red spots fell. They turned into dense, long snakes in the air and shot over. But they were cut into pieces by an invisible force and turned into blood all over the ground. You can understand it as a kind of poison. Seeing Su Li's attentive look, Black Lotus suddenly found the feeling of being a teacher in those days. He put his hands on his hips and raised his head. This poison is not refined from ordinary poisons, but gathered from all the negative thoughts such as resentment, hatred, anger, and so on. Mortals will die if they touch it, and ordinary practitioners will die if they encounter it. Speaking of this, Black Lotus turned his eyes. His eyes seemed to penetrate the black mist, and saw Wen Han, who was fighting hard in the mist. The boy you like is not ordinary. It is worthwhile that you put medicine in his 3 meals every day to improve his physical body. Su Li pursed her lips, and a trace of pride appeared in her eyes. Has my eyesight ever been bad? Black Lotus rolled his eyes and said angrily, Hurry up and eat this ghost. If we delay any longer, that kid will be corroded by the ghost. Su Li's eyes slightly condensed, and the pure ghost energy flowed. The shadow behind her instantly sprang out and grew to a size of 30 meters against the wind. It opened its mouth, which was half the size of a person's body, and bit off half of the blood-red body of the giant snake. Hist! The black mist rolled violently, and Wen Han, who was exhausted, suddenly faced a formidable enemy. But he did not hear the deep fear in the crazy roar. Good? Delicious. The evil ghost's instinctive thought came intermittently, and then its body continued to expand. It wanted to eat the upper body of the giant snake. But the giant snake rushed into the deep mountain and disappeared without saying a word. The evil ghost was not willing to let it go, and directly flew to the deep mountain to chase it. But when it flew to the boundary of the deep mountain, it hit an extremely hard and transparent wall. Boom! Lightning flashed and thunder roared, and the earth shook. What's the matter? It's an earthquake. Come out of the house. The disciples and the residents at the foot of the mountain were suddenly shocked and were in a mess. Wen Han looked at the dark clouds that suddenly dispersed in the sky and was at a loss. Then he saw Su Li, who was also at a loss, standing not far from him. Little junior sister apprentice. He was burning with anxiety. He rushed to Su Li quickly, grasped Su Li's arms tightly, and stared at her face nervously. Junior sister apprentice. Junior sister apprentice. The little girl came to her senses, turned her eyes in confusion, and asked crisply, Senior fellow apprentice, what's wrong with you? Hearing this normal sentence, Wen Han was relieved, and a bright smile appeared on his pale face. Then he fell down in front of Su Li. This boy is exhausted. It's hard for him to worry about you, old witch. Black Lotus rushed out. Su Li held Wen Han and slowly put him on the ground. Then she said indifferently, I'm 18 years old this year. Black Lotus unconsciously, it has been more than 4 years since I was reborn. Time flies so fast. Su Li muttered to herself. She spread out her palms and saw the scorched marks on her palms. A look of thinking flashed in her eyes. Is it the fire of extreme yang? The evil ghost hit the barrier and was slightly injured. Her body would also be affected a little, but it was just a skin injury. After all, even if the evil ghost exploded, she could recover after a few months of rest. Suddenly, Su Li's ears moved slightly. Then she loosened her body and fell beside Wen Han. After a few breaths, the woman in black flew over with a still cold face. As soon as she landed, she looked serious. She slightly opened her 5 fingers and the white nails flashed with cold light, stabbing at Su Li's throat lying on the ground. Su Li didn't move, but the woman in black moved faster. The killing intent in her eyes almost condensed into a substance. Swish! The chilly wind blew over. The white and sharp nails stopped on the snow-white skin of Su Li's neck. After a pause, they finally retracted. The woman in black straightened up and narrowed her eyes. Seeing the disciples of the sect in a mess at the foot of the mountain, she bent down to pick up Su Li and Wen Hun with both hands and flew to their residence. 3 days later, Wen Hun woke up slowly. When he saw the ceiling of his room, the last scene before he fainted flashed in his eyes. Suddenly, he couldn't lie down anymore. With a splitting headache, he got up from the bed and stumbled to the door. But he saw Su Li coming to him, senior fellow apprentice. The girl was stunned. She stepped forward to support the tottering Wen Hun with surprise and joy and dragged him to the room. Senior fellow apprentice, it's great that you wake up. Senior sister apprentice, you said that you can't get up yet. After you wake up, you have to lie down and recuperate. I'm not so fragile. Wen Hun smiled. Suddenly, he froze and said nervously, Did senior sister apprentice you speak? The girl shook her head and pointed to the paper full of handwriting on the table. Senior sister apprentice you went to guard the hall for you. Wen Hun breathed a sigh of relief. The master had secretly told him that if senior sister apprentice you spoke one day, he should immediately activate the tactical matrix of the sect and kill her. At that time, he was young and didn't understand it. Now, after experiencing all kinds of weird things, he understood that the master's instruction must have something to do with those ghosts. Since senior sister apprentice Yu guards the hall in person, she can definitely wait for the master's return with peace of mind. Wen Hun sat back on the bed and looked a little relaxed. His face was even a little ruddy that he couldn't see. He felt a little strange. He had been to the deep mountain and fought with those ghosts. Every time he overdrew that power, he would feel pain all over his body for a few days. His headache was much worse than now, which was worse than death. But this time, the overdrawing was obviously much more severe than the previous times, and the feeling of physical feedback was not so serious. Could it be that the master said, the erosion period has already appeared? Wen Hun's face was slightly pale, and his hands clenched subconsciously. He was only 98 years old. No, the master clearly said that the erosion period would only appear after 200 years old. Senior fellow apprentice, what's wrong with you? You look so pale. Su Li said. She was also puzzled in her heart. She kindly treated this guy, but he looked solemn as if he was about to die. Wen Hun came to his sense and waved his hands repeatedly. Nothing. Maybe I'm too tired. Seeing that he didn't tell the truth, Su Li didn't insist and let him have a good rest. Returning to the addendum in her house, Su Li took out bottles and jars from the universe ring and frowned slightly. Is there something wrong with the medicine I refined? But the boy's body does recover well. Forget it. Let's continue first and then adjust it. 3 days later, Wen Hun was completely healed, but his expression became more and more solemn. Every time he stayed with Su Li, he would be in a daze from time to time. No one knew what he was thinking. Although there were many cracks on some mountains of the sect because of the collision of Su Li and the evil ghost, fortunately, the big tactical matrix of the sect repaired itself, and the disturbance soon subsided. After Wen Hun was completely healed, he returned to the hall of the sect. Senior sister apprentice Yu returned to the deep mountain. Her expression when she left seemed to be very anxious. After her figure completely disappeared in the deep mountain, Su Li touched her neck. She didn't forget the situation that day. Her intuition wouldn't be wrong. Senior sister apprentice Yu really wanted to kill her at that moment, but she didn't know why she stopped. In the boring waiting, another few days passed. Wen Hun completed a certain transformation in these days. His expression changed from solemn and uneasy to calm. Junior sister apprentice. The setting sun was about to fall into the mountain, and the light was like blood. The cold wind blew, bringing a little snow. Su Li patted the snow on her shoulder and turned her head with a puzzled look. Senior fellow apprentice, what's wrong? Wen Hun showed a gentle smile, as when they met for the first time. You should keep what I said today in mind. Suli frowned when she heard the words, which seemed to be a funeral. Senior fellow apprentice, what's wrong with you? If you have anything to say, just say it. I will bear it with you. When Hun couldn't help laughing bitterly. Listen, Master looks kind, but if it is really a critical moment, he can give up everything. You don't trust him too much. Suli was stunned and blurted out, why? Master is obviously very. That's all an illusion. When Hun interrupted her and touched his cold chest. If I weren't a little special, he wouldn't teach me carefully. At this moment, when Hun suddenly transmitted the sound from speaking, the immortal cultivation sect, as its name suggests, raises a god, a ghost. Chapter 520. Although I haven't been in the sect for a long time, fortunately, the Master always takes me with him. He doesn't tell me many things, but I can guess most of them under the influence of what I see and hear. After saying the word immortal of ghost, when Hun seemed to open the shackles in his heart. While walking back to the mountain road with Su Li, he instilled all his speculations to Su Li. The immortal nourishing tactics of the sect is divided into 2 chapters. One is human chapter, and the other is ghost chapter. A long time ago, the immortal nourishing tactics should be divided into 2 factions, human chapter and ghost chapter. Master didn't lie half a month ago at the square. The inheritance of the nourishing spirit art is indeed incomplete, and only the first 3 stages are left. However, he left some leeway in his words. Only the human chapter is missing, while the ghost chapter is complete. Hearing that, Suli stretched out her hand and pointed out a nimbus in the nothingness. When Hun felt a little uncomfortable when he sensed the nimbus, but he still nodded with appreciation, the second hurdle of human chapter has caught up with your cultivation. It seems that you haven't been lazy during this period. Senior fellow apprentice, since the practice method of human chapter is incomplete, why doesn't the Master impart ghost chapter? Suli heard a clue and followed when Hun's words. When Hun looked gloomy suddenly, after a moment of silence, he continued to transmit the sound in silence. His voice was slightly perturbed and heavy. Since it is ghost chapter, only the real ghost can practice it. If a living person practices it forcibly, he will only become a lunatic who is neither a human nor a ghost. When Hun paused, as if he was accumulating courage, then he seemed to figure something out. He barely maintained a smile and said, I practice ghost chapter. When Hun stopped, and the wind seemed to be stagnant at this moment, Suli turned her eyes, and her face was full of curiosity. Her bright eyes were like the sunshine in a dark room. She was not afraid at all. Senior fellow apprentice, are you a ghost? When Hun was stunned, and then nodded bitterly. Since ancient times, it is difficult for a malicious ghost to enter the reincarnation, but I am the reincarnation of a malicious ghost. I am born half human and half ghost, so the Master accepts me. Su Li's eyes brightened, and she exclaimed, Senior fellow apprentice, you are so awesome. We can't practice the ghost chapter. Hearing this, when Hun's eyes widened slightly, and he fell into a sluggish state again. He was even a loss. He had imagined the reaction of the little junior sister apprentice when she heard this, but he didn't expect that the little girl didn't play according to common sense. Junior sister, I'm telling the truth. When Hun was impatient, his snow-white clothes suddenly turned light red from the corner of his clothes. A red-clothed evil ghost. This kid is really the reincarnation of an evil ghost. How rare! Black Lotus's exclamation came to her ears. Suli turned her eyes and held when Hun's cheeks with her warm hands. When Hun's eyes widened, and he froze on the spot as if he was immobilized. The blood on the hem of his clothes faded away like a tide, and then gathered on his face. Senior brother, your face is so red and hot. Are you still injured? Suli blinked her eyes and showed a trace of worry just in time. When Hun came to his sense with a start and hurriedly stepped aside. He, who was in Yuanying realm, was unsteady on his feet and almost fell down. Master, you're not a child anymore. When can you change your temper of teasing people? Black Lotus looked at Wen Hun, whose face was as red as the bottom of a hot pot with pity. He sighed. Another poor child. Junior Sister Apprentice, what I said is true. Don't take it as a joke. There are many ghosts in the book pavilion, the isolation tower, and the deep mountain who are possessed by the devil after practicing the ghost chapter. When you see them, you must pretend not to see them and don't talk to them. Besides, if the master gives you the practice method of the ghost chapter, you must not practice it. You should pretend not to know it so that you can be safe. Junior Sister Apprentice, don't run away. Senior Fellow Apprentice, I remember what you said. It's getting dark and I have to cook. Seeing Suli go away, when Hun sighed faintly. Forget it. Junior Sister Apprentice was still young. Even if he had entered the erosion period, it was not a problem to hold on for a few years. He still had time. After a sumptuous dinner, when Hun sensed that his physical body had fully recovered and left with a heavy face, Suli watched him go away and closed the door of the courtyard. There was a hint of enlightenment in her eyes. When Hun is anxious to tell me these things, because he sensed that he was in danger. Since the ghost chapter can only be practiced by real ghosts, and this boy is just a half ghost, there must be side effects. My medicine misled him to think that the side effects began. After figuring it out, Suli smiled slightly and returned to the addendum to absorb the power of the soul in the meat for dinner. In the middle of the night, the whole immortal cultivation sect fell into a dead silence. In the night of the immortal cultivation sect, no disciple was allowed to leave the residence. This had become a tradition in the immortal cultivation sect, which had never been changed for thousands of years. Those disciples who had once tried to test the method had all vanished from the face of the earth, and there was no exception. At this moment, the moon was in the middle of the sky. Suli raised her head and glanced at the crescent moon hanging in the sky. She narrowed her eyes slightly and gently pushed open the door of the book pavilion. The two doors slid inward silently. At this moment, all the sounds disappeared. There was no light in the dark and empty door, like a huge mouth to devour people. Suli's expression remained unchanged. As soon as she stepped into the book pavilion, the two doors suddenly closed fiercely, but strangely, there was no sound. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The candlelight on the wall suddenly lit up automatically, and the entire hall on the first floor was brightly lit. But Suli felt that the lit flame revealed a cold atmosphere. It's so late, but someone still comes to the book pavilion. He is really hardworking. An old voice came. Suli looked in the direction of the voice and saw an old servant in gray sweeping the floor, holding an oil lamp, coming out from behind a bookshelf with a kind smile on his face. When Suli saw him, she somehow thought of Hijio. This kind smile seemed to come from the same mold. Or maybe the ghost in front of her deliberately imitated Hijio's smile. Suli didn't speak and ignored the existence of the old servant. She walked to the bookshelf and walked to the place where the essays was placed according to her memory. Sure enough, she saw the familiar booklet. She reached out to pick it up and opened it casually. Suddenly, she saw the ending of the first story. It turns out that the woman in the mountain does not live alone in the deep mountain. There's an old woman and a half-grown girl in the house. Although the life in the mountain is hard, it is happy and quiet. The scholar lived peacefully with them for a night, and suddenly felt that he was not good at seeking fame. He decided to abandon secular distractions and stay in the deep mountain to practice hard forever. Seeing this, Suli closed the booklet directly, and a trace of sarcasm flashed in her eyes. Every word in this book was distorted, revealing a strong sense of falsehood. Even if she didn't meet the ghost who pretended to be Wen Hun that day, she wouldn't believe this childish ending. You don't seem to be satisfied with the ending? The old servant who swept the floor came to Suli at some time. He didn't look at the booklet, but at his toes. His voice changed slightly. Suli suddenly turned around with her back to the old servant. But she just avoided the sharp claws of the old servant. She scanned the booklets on the bookshelf with her divine awareness. Suddenly, she came to the bookshelf and picked up a black booklet, Ghost Chapter. I remember that it is the human chapter that was put here during the day. Interesting. This thought flashed through Suli's mind. She tried hard to open the black booklet, but she couldn't open it. It seemed that the inner pages of the booklet were all glued together and couldn't be opened at all. Junior sister apprentice. A figure flashed beside Su Li, and a woman in cyan with disheveled hair appeared. The woman in cyan had a pale face, but she was still delicate. Only a pair of dead fish eyes ruined the beauty. She stood on tiptoe and stared at Su Li's face. Her voice was as sharp as a night owl, almost piercing the eardrum. You don't have the divine token to practice this method. Put it back. Divine token? Su Li tilted her head and smiled. She put the black booklet in her arms, and her eyes fell on the woman in cyan. What is the divine token? Before her voice died away, the delicate face of the woman in cyan immediately became ferocious. Her clothes were stained like blood, and her hair grew wildly. After a few breaths, her hair became a huge black wave, and Su Li was submerged in it. He, ignorant human, answer me. You are my sacrifice. The gray-clothed old servant turned into a wisp of smoke in awe and threw himself into the oil lamp on the bookshelf. Then his head popped out and licked his lips unwillingly. Poor human clan. They even attracted a ferocious ghost. No one came to the book pavilion to die for a long time at night. He wanted to have some fun, but boom! There was a sudden loud noise in the black hair, and countless broken hairs turned into black dust falling all over the sky. The oil lamp shook, and the frightened eyes of the gray-clothed old servant were illuminated. Su Li, who was integrated with the evil ghost, wiped the corners of her mouth. Her dark and deep eyes suddenly turned to look at the oil lamp, as if she was looking at an extremely delicious food. After awakening the fusion talent, it is the first time for me to use it. It turns out that the 5 senses of the evil ghost are very different from mine. If it is the original body, it will definitely not feel that the ferocious ghost is delicious. Thinking of this, Su Li picked up the shivering body of the gray-clothed old servant, the oil lamp. She chuckled. Answer my question obediently, or I will eat you. The gray-clothed old servant wanted to cry, but had no tears. His body trembled more violently. Who was the ghost? The book pavilion at night was cool. Frogs croaked outside the window from time to time. It was quiet and harmonious. In such harmony, Su Li held the oil lamp that was burning strongly in the wind and whispered, I really only know so much. Don't look at me like this. In fact, I am just a little ghost with 300 years of cultivation. If you want to know the truth of this sect, ask those ferocious ghosts in red. They must know. The gray-clothed old servant was frightened and almost cried and pretended to be pitiful. But you also saw that after I ate the kind senior sister apprentice, no one else came out. You see, even the book pavilion has returned to normal. Things are not easy to deal with. Su Li showed a trace of chagrin. It seemed that she was regretting that she ate too early, which made the gray-clothed old servant break into a cold sweat. Grandpa, what should I do? I'm going back to make breakfast for my senior fellow apprentice before dawn. Chapter 521. The oil lamp kept struggling, trying to escape from Su Li's control. But his efforts were not effective. Instead, he sensed that the 2 small hands grasping him gradually exerted force, and the old oil lamp suddenly made a sound of being overwhelmed. The gray-clothed old servant suddenly panicked. If the oil lamp was broken, he would also disappear. His life was hanging by a thread, and he immediately forgot the rules of the book pavilion. Mercy! Mercy! This old servant remembers now. You go to the 2nd floor. The information on the 2nd floor is not connected with the 1st floor. There are many ghosts in red there, and they're all old ghosts who have lived for many years. As soon as the words came out, Su Li loosened her hands and threw the oil lamp into the Tsang Lei's cave. If what you said is false, I will crush you and make medicine. The gray-clothed old servant looked at the cave and heard the words. How could he not know what kind of existence he had encountered? He could only sigh repeatedly and admit his bad luck. Fortunately, what he said just now was all true. Su Li did not hesitate and directly went up the stairs to the 2nd floor. When she stepped on the soft carpet on the 2nd floor, she felt a gust of chilly wind blowing on her face. All she could see was mist, and the chilly breath was several times stronger than the first floor. In such a dead space, as soon as the breath belonging to a living person appeared, it was like a lamp in the darkness, and immediately attracted the attention of all ghosts. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Pairs of blood-red eyes lit up, and their eyes were full of crazy appetite. How long had they not eaten meat? Suli did not move, and slowly walked to the bookshelf, as if she did not see those malicious ghosts at all. The footsteps were extremely harsh in the dead space. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Many malicious ghosts in red were killed. More than a dozen red lights lit up from the darkness. Suli glanced at them roughly and found there were more than 20 bloody eyes. Every time she took a step, those bloody eyes would get closer, and some strange appearances were revealed from the darkness. Among them, there were humans, beasts, and odd monsters. Their faces were extremely distorted, and they all stared at every part of Suli's body. If an ordinary practitioner came to this step, he would have been frozen to death by the chilly breath that escaped from the malicious ghosts. Ha! Suddenly, Suli stopped. With a smile in her eyes, she looked around at the ferocious ghosts who were less than 3 meters away from her and said sweetly, 24. Who is the oldest? The atmosphere froze in that instant, and then all the evil spirits' blood-red bodies exploded. They opened their mouths full of fangs at lightning speed, ferociously and crazily biting the only living person on the scene. But this time, their food did not have the usual look of fear on its face. Instead, it had a strange smile on its face. Then a bloody mouth that was larger than all 24 of them combined opened up from within the pitch-black shadow. All the malicious spirits stared at this scene with their mouths agape. Before they could even dodge, they were all swallowed by the bloody mouth. Whoosh! The second floor also returned to normal. When the gray-robed old servant in Tsang Lei's cave saw this scene, his body trembled even more violently, and there were even a few cracks on the lamb body. The 24 red specters on the second level are all lords who have cultivated for thousands of years, but they've all been eaten. In the moonlight, Suli's shadow trembled for a while and then calmed down. Suli looked up at the third floor. She was a little unsatisfied, but finally went downstairs and left. The evil ghosts had eaten enough tonight, and they needed time to digest it. The next morning, when Hun woke up for meditation and came to Suli's yard for breakfast, as usual. Senior fellow apprentice, I made a new lean meat porridge today. Come and have a taste. Seeing the familiar smile of his junior sister apprentice, when Hun felt a little relieved. He walked to the table and sat down. When he was about to pick up the spoon, he suddenly felt something and looked out of the room. He didn't know when senior sister apprentice Yu in black stood at the door, looking at him coldly. When Hun was slightly shocked. Why did senior sister apprentice Yu come out from the deep mountain at this time? Senior sister apprentice? When Hun stood up, the woman in black took a deep look at him and motioned him to keep up. Then she flew to the book pavilion. Did something happen in the book pavilion this time? When Hun's heart sank, and he immediately put down his chopsticks to keep up. Sure enough, there is a connection between the book pavilion and the deep mountain. Suli's eyes flashed, and she also flew to keep up. After a while, the three of them came to the book pavilion. Several disciples of the sect were waiting at the door. Senior fellow apprentice one, you finally come. An ordinary-looking middle-aged man in Zhuji realm greeted them. He called Wen Hun, who looked like a teenager, senior fellow apprentice, which sounded very strange. Suli glanced at him strangely. Wen Hun smiled embarrassedly. Don't look at me like this. If other senior fellow apprentices and senior sister apprentices don't show up, I will be the chief disciple of the sect. Senior fellow apprentice, you are so awesome. Suli's eyes were bright, which made Wen Hun's face hot. Fortunately, the words of the middle-aged man came in time to save the situation. Senior fellow apprentice, go in and have a look. The book pavilion is in a mess. Wen Hun nodded with a serious look and walked into the book pavilion. Suddenly, he saw a ruin. The morning light shone down, and there was a faint smell of decay. Senior fellow apprentice, when I and junior fellow apprentices came to light the incense in the morning, the first and second floors became like this. It seems that they have been abandoned for many years. It's very strange. When Hun walked to the ruins and could vaguely see the traces of bookshelves in the ruins, he waved his hand, and a tattered miscellaneous book flew out automatically. But before it fell into his hand, it turned into flying ash and scattered. When the middle-aged disciple saw this scene, he immediately widened his eyes and said repeatedly, "That's it." All the books seemed to be corroded by time and turn into ashes. When Hun frowned tightly, he, who knew some of the truth, certainly saw it more deeply than the middle-aged disciple. "Senior fellow apprentice, why does senior sister apprentice you disappear?" Suli suddenly said. When Hun immediately woke up, he looked up and didn't see the figure of the woman in black. "Senior sister apprentice you?" The middle-aged disciple was slightly stunned and immediately said, "I didn't see senior sister apprentice you. I was about to send someone to find you. Senior fellow apprentice, you happen to come here." When Hun frowned more tightly, since the master left, the sect had many misunderstandings. All kinds of evil spirits came out to make trouble. Although he didn't know whether the senior sister apprentice you just now was true, he didn't bother to investigate it since she didn't act maliciously. Thinking of this, he waved to Suli to let Suli follow him to the second floor. When Hun originally thought that the strength of ghosts on the second floor would not destroy too many bookshelves, but when he saw the empty and bare space on the second floor, he couldn't help twitching his mouth. What on earth happened here last night? Why was it worse than the first floor? All the pneumas of ghosts disappeared completely. Master will come back half a month later. If he sees that the first and second floors of the book pavilion are destroyed, what will he think? When Hun sighed secretly and was about to go downstairs, "Senior fellow apprentice, don't we go up and have a look?" Suli looked back at the second floor. A few evil ghosts hiding in the dark immediately hid in a darker place. "No, we can find more clues on the first floor. Come with me. I have something to tell you." "Okay, senior fellow apprentice." When Hun's voice came from downstairs, Suli responded crisply and walked downstairs cheerfully. At the moment when she went downstairs, she could faintly hear a group of little ghosts breathing with relief. The book pavilion is the hiding place of many ghosts. The power of ghosts in these books is all extracted, so it becomes what it is now. When Hun spread out a book of essays and transmitted the sound to guide Su Li, and I can barely keep it from dispersing with the power of Ghost Chapter. Look through it and see if there is an ending to the story in it. Su Li opened it according to his words, and immediately saw the ending of the first story. She read it out. "Deep in the desolate and uninhabited mountains, there are countless wild spirits and monsters. How could weak women survive alone? They were just mortals who were killed while passing through this place. After they died, they were unwilling to become evil spirits, so they lured the living to become their food. The scholar didn't know that after being eaten by the 3 female ghosts, not even his soul was left behind." The ending of the story not only appeared, but also talked about the story of human and ghost without any taboo. Sure enough, the ghosts on the first and second floor of the book pavilion have all left. When Hun's face was a little gloomy, those ghosts would not step out of the book pavilion for thousands of years, and they only moved at night. Why did they suddenly violate the agreement and leave? He didn't think those things would be destroyed. As far as he knew, no one could defeat those ghosts. Even a master would only compromise with them, make unfair deals one after another, and even let those things devour the disciples of the sect. The immortal cultivation sect was a fragile shell wrapped around the ghosts. It was okay for the ghosts to sleep. If they completely woke up one day, no one could survive. The human clan was too fragile. When Hun clenched his fists and looked up at the ignorant junior sister apprentice, he took a deep breath and dismissed the other disciples. Then he walked to the 2 stone lions in front of the gate of the book pavilion and stood still. "Come out. I'm Hun. I have something to ask you." As soon as the words came out, the 2 stone lions suddenly shook. Su Li's eyes narrowed. The pneuma of these 2 ghosts was so weak that she could hardly perceive it. Last night, the pneuma of the malicious ghost in red was too strong, so she didn't perceive it. However, she just stood here. Sue Lee's eyes flickered, and there was a trace of playfulness in her eyes. The two stone lions suddenly shook more violently, but they didn't dare to pretend to be dead. They could only show two bitter faces. When one of the human-faced lions was about to speak, it heard Sue Lee's sound transmission. "If you dare to expose me, I will eat you." The stone lion stared at her and almost bit his tongue. He immediately swallowed the words in his mouth and changed his words. "Lord Wenhun, what do you want to ask?" Wenhun was stunned, and a strange expression appeared in his eyes. Although the two stone lions were extremely weak ghosts, every time they talked to him, they always raised their noses and wanted to step on his head. Why were they so humble this time? Did the master win back a little face for us this time? Wenhun was puzzled, but he didn't care much about the matter of the book pavilion. He said in a low voice, "What happened in the book pavilion last night? Tell me everything you saw." The twisted face of the stone lion paused for a moment, and then seemed to be instructed by something. He immediately said, "Lord Wenhun, the ghosts in red on the first and second floor were all dead last night." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.